picture a wool coat. Now picture putting it on in July. Now picture you're not allowed to take it off, not at work, not in the street, not in church, not even at a dinner party where the windows do not open, and 40 candles are burning and the host has closed the curtains because it is more genteel that way. Now add a vest underneath the coat, a heavy cotton shirt under that, maybe a union suit, that is a full-body undergarment, long sleeves, long legs, beneath all of that. Because the year is 1896, and that is just what you wear. That is what everyone wears. That is what is decent. Now raise the temperature to 94 degrees Fahrenheit. Hold it there for 10 days. Welcome to New York City in the summer of 1896, when the heat came down like a punishment, and the city had absolutely nothing. No fans, no ice cream trucks, no air conditioning, no emergency cooling centers, no synthetic breathable fabrics, no concept that any of these things might one day exist to fight back with, except wool and willpower, and the specific kind of stubbornness that poor people develop when they have no other options. Picture the most densely populated neighborhood on the planet Earth, denser than Calcutta, denser than Hong Kong, denser than anywhere anyone has measured. Now fill it with coal smoke from 10,000 stoves. Add the smell of 20,000 working horses and the garbage they produce, and the garbage everyone else produces. Add the particular warmth of 500,000 bodies living in a vertical stack of brick and wood that has been absorbing sunlight since 6 in the morning and has no mechanism for releasing it. Add children, add vendors, add the fish market that has been running since 3. Add the specific sweetness of a July heat that has not broken in 7 days. That is the smell of the morning. That is the smell you open your eyes to. That is the Lower East Side of Manhattan, July 1896, where the poorest people in America are living in the hottest conditions on record, wearing the warmest fabric available to their class, carrying 50 pounds of ice up 5 flights of stairs in the full noon sun, and somehow surviving it. Mostly surviving it. I make these history stories, and I genuinely do not know if you listen to them to sleep or if you're the kind of person who just likes to lie very still and think about how difficult the 19th century was while avoiding your responsibilities. Either way, get comfortable. Because tonight we're going to live one day in the worst summer New York City ever had. One day, one delivery route. Everything your body would have felt and smelled and barely survived. Here we go. Your eyes open before the alarm. You do not own an alarm. You have never owned an alarm. But your body wakes you anyway, because your body has been trying to tell you something for the past 4 hours, and that something is this. This room is trying to cook you. It is not quite dawn. The sky outside the single window, the one window, the only window, looking out onto an airshaft barely 2 feet wide, is the colour of old pewter, grey-violet. Not quite light, not quite dark. The street noise has not started yet. The rag pickers and the fish carts and the push carts and the screaming children, all of that comes later. For now there is just the silence of 4 in the morning in a building that holds 43 families, and the heat. The heat is already here. It did not leave last night. That is the problem. Yesterday it was 91 degrees. The day before, 93. The night before that it got down to 78, which sounds like relief until you understand that 78 degrees at midnight in a room with no cross-ventilation on the 4th floor of a building that has been absorbing sunlight since 6 in the morning is not relief. It is just a different kind of suffocation. The mattress underneath you is wet, not damp, wet. Your own body has soaked it through again, which means you've been sweating in your sleep. Real sweating, not the polite perspiration of someone at a garden party, actual rivers of salt water pouring out of your body while you're unconscious. And the mattress has no capacity left. It has given up. It is just fabric now. Fabric that smells of you and of the man who slept on it before you and the man before him, all their summers compressed into this one moment of early morning misery. You are wearing your union suit. Long sleeves, long legs, white cotton, now grey around the collar and grey around the wrists from washings and workings, and the particular grey that only comes from years of proximity to people who do not have time to be perfectly clean. You do not think about the union suit. You do not think about why you are wearing a full-body cotton garment in July in New York. You are wearing it because you always wear it. Because going to bed without it is what women of easy virtue do, according to your mother, who's in County Clare and has opinions about everything even from 3,000 miles away. The room is 8 feet by 9 feet. You know this because you paced it once, last winter, when everything felt small and close and you needed to know exactly how trapped you were. 8 feet by 9 feet. Your bed takes up one corner. The trunk with your other clothes takes up another. There is a small table with a basin, and a candle stub, and a photograph of your family in a frame that cost 35 cents at a shop on Hester Street. The photograph is slightly warped from moisture. Your mother's face is slightly smeared. You do not look at the photograph right now. You look at the ceiling, which has a water stain shaped vaguely like Ireland, which you noticed once and have never been able to unnotice. The ceiling is warm to look at. The air is warm. Everything is warm. It is the 7th day of the heat. You have learned, in these 7 days, certain things. You have learned that the corner room at the end of the hall on your floor is 2 degrees cooler, because it has 2 windows instead of 1, and that Mrs. Pietrovich, who lives there, has noticed this and started charging her daughters 10 cents each to sit in it after supper. You have learned that the water that comes out of the pump in the courtyard is coolest in the morning before 6, and that if you wait until 7, the water will be warm enough to brew tea, which defeats the purpose of drinking it. You have learned that the small child from apartment 3B, the one with the red hair who always runs in the hall, has gone quiet this week. You've heard her crying. You've not heard her running. You've not thought too hard about that. You sit up. The motion alone makes you sweat. This is the thing nobody tells you about extreme heat. It is not just unpleasant, it is expensive. Every movement costs. Getting up from bed costs. Walking across the room costs. Pulling on your trousers costs. You pay for every small thing in salt and water and the specific grey exhaustion that comes from sleeping in a room that is trying to cook you. Your trousers are on the floor where you left them. Brown wool, heavy, designed for a New York November. In November they are exactly right. In July they are insane. But they are what you have and what you wear and what every man of your class and occupation wears. Because the alternative, cotton or linen, or the lightweight fabrics you see advertised in shop windows, costs money you do not have. The wool trousers cost $4 at Klein's on the Lower East Side. They will last 3 years if you are careful. The cotton summer trousers in the window of that shop on Broadway, the nice ones with the thin stripe, those are 75 cents more. And 75 cents more is not a difference you can easily explain to your landlady, Mrs. Bukowski, when rent is due on the 1st. You pull on the trousers. They are warm even before you put them on. They've been sitting on the floor in this room all night, soaking up the heat. When they touch your legs, it feels like mild punishment. Your shirt is hanging on a nail by the door. White once. Now a specific shade of off-white that only comes from too many washings with harsh soap in cold water. The collar is a little stiff. You wore it yesterday and did not wash it, because washing requires going to the pump and heating water, and having a moment to let it dry. And all of that requires time that the day did not have. You will wash it tonight. You said that yesterday. But tonight you will come home from the route, and your hands will hurt, and you will sit on the edge of the bed, and the sitting will turn into lying down, and the lying down will turn into sweating into the mattress, and the shirt will still be on the nail when you wake tomorrow. You button it up to the collar. All the buttons. The collar button too. Because that is what you do. An unbuttoned collar in public is for drunkards and anarchists, and you are a delivery driver's assistant at the Manhattan Ice Company, and you will button your collar. The vest goes on over the shirt. Dark wool, 4 buttons, a small pocket on the left side that you've never put anything in because you have nothing small enough and valuable enough to go into a vest pocket. Your one luxury is a watch. It was your father's. It lives in that pocket, the chain hooked to the second button, ticking quietly in the heat like a small metal heart. The jacket. You leave the jacket. The jacket stays on the chair. This is your one concession to the temperature. You will put the jacket on before you get into the wagon, because Mr. Hannigan, who drives the wagon, is old enough to have fought in the Civil War and has opinions about jackets and decency that predate most of the buildings on this street. But for now, crossing the courtyard in the grey dawn, you will walk in your vest. This is rebellion. This is as rebellious as you get. You splash water from the basin on your face. The water is warm. It has been sitting in the basin since last night. You splash it anyway, because you are trying to wake your body up and your body's not cooperating. The water runs down your neck and soaks into your collar, and this is actually a relief, the one wet thing in all this dry heat, until 5 minutes later, when it will just add to the general dampness of everything. You look at yourself in the small mirror hung above the basin. Your name is Thomas Malone. You are 20 years old, from County Clare, Ireland, and you've been in New York City for 8 months. You arrived in November, which was the wrong time to arrive in New York if you wanted to be impressed by America. Grey skies, cold rain, the harbour full of the smell of coal and rot. But here you are, 8 months in, and now it is July and you have the specific look of a man who has been slowly steamed for a week. Your face is red, not sunburned, just red, flushed. Your cheeks permanently high-coloured as if you are embarrassed about something. There are shadows under your eyes that are new from the nights that do not cool down. Your hair is damp at the temples and you have not shaved in 2 days, which you will fix tonight, along with the shirt. You look like what you are. A boy trying to be a man in a city that is currently trying to kill everyone. You put the watch in your pocket. You put the jacket over your arm. You open the door to the hall. The hall hits you like a wall. The tenement hallways do not have windows. They have walls and doors and the smells of 43 families cooking and existing and sweating and arguing behind those doors, and the one gaslight at the end of the hall that has been turned down to a faint blue flame to save the landlord's gas bill. The heat in the hall is different from the heat in your room. In your room the heat is at least familiar. Your room has your smells, your sweat, your particular arrangement of misery. The hall has everyone's. It has the Petrovich family's boiled cabbage from dinner last night, still hanging in the air like a fog. It has the Kowalski baby's specific smell that you have learned not to name. It has someone's chamber pot that should have been emptied yesterday and was not. And underneath all of it, underneath the cabbage and the baby and the chamber pot and the 43 families, there is the baseline smell of a New York tenement in summer. You know that smell now. You did not know it in November. In November, this building smelled like cold stone and coal smoke and other people's cooking, and that seemed like a lot, like more than enough, like more than a building had any right to smell. Now you know that was nothing. That was the building at rest. In summer, the building smells like it is alive and afraid and sweating, exactly like you. You move through the hall toward the back stairs, stepping over the Rosenberg baby's shoes left at the threshold. The Rosenbergs on the second floor have 6 children, and there are always small shoes in the hall. It is like a permanent exhibit. And you go down the stairs to the courtyard. The courtyard is a narrow strip of packed dirt between this building and the one behind it. There is the pump. There are 3 ash bins. There is a wooden fence going grey with age that separates the 2 properties. And this morning, at 4:30 in the morning, there are already 6 people at the pump. Mrs. Bukowski, your landlady, is there. She is a massive Polish woman who arrived in this country 20 years ago with a husband, a cooking pot, and a capacity for suffering that would bring tears to the eyes of most saints. The husband is gone now, sick or left, or both, she does not say. The cooking pot is enormous. This suffering she has turned into a kind of muscle. She's pumping water into a large bucket, her arms working steadily, her face the same expression it always is, evaluating whether the world is quite as much of a disappointment as she suspects. She glances at you as you come down the stairs. Malone. Mrs. Bukowski. Hot again. Yes, ma'am. My husband, she says, always said a man could endure anything if he drank enough water. You wait to see if this is wisdom or the beginning of a much longer speech. She goes back to pumping. That is it. That is the entire thought. You wait your turn at the pump and fill your tin cup. You carry it on your belt hook. Everyone in this neighbourhood carries something to drink from because the city's public water troughs are not to be trusted, and anyway they are mostly for horses. And you drink. The water is cool, not cold. Cool. The best thing in your morning. 3 cups. You drink 3 cups of pump water standing in the courtyard in the grey dawn, your jacket over your arm, already sweating lightly into your vest, and it is the closest thing to happiness you have felt since yesterday morning. Then you put on your jacket and go to meet the wagon. The Manhattan Ice Company keeps its wagons at a stable on Canal Street, 4 blocks from where you live, which is the main reason you got this job. The ice route starts early. It has to. In July heat, ice starts to melt the moment it leaves the ice house, and the faster you deliver it, the more of it arrives intact, and the more arrives intact, the more customers are satisfied, and the more customers are satisfied, the more likely they are to pay the bill rather than argue about it, and argument eats into the schedule, and the schedule is already tight enough to make Mr. Hannigan's eye twitch when he thinks about it. You arrive at the stable at 5 minutes to 5. Mr. Hannigan is already there. Of course he is. He is standing next to the wagon, checking the ice blocks that 2 stable boys have loaded into the back, running his hand along the edges, reading them the way a carpenter reads wood, looking for fault lines and bad cuts, and the specific kinds of inadequacy he expects from everyone who is not him. He is 61 years old, Peter Hannigan, Cork-born, American since 1862, has driven an ice wagon in this city for 19 years. His forearms are the size of small hams. His moustache is the colour of old iron, and his opinions about the correct way to do things are comprehensive, strongly held and not available for debate. He sees you coming and nods once. You're wearing the jacket. Yes, sir. Good man. He turns back to the ice. Today will be bad. Hot. Bad. He says it differently, so you understand he means more than the temperature. Mrs. Hannigan's sister lives on Baxter Street. Went by there last evening. Children sick on every floor of that building. You do not say anything. You have heard things too. There are always things to hear in this neighbourhood, and you have been learning to hear them and not to flinch visibly, because flinching visibly takes energy you cannot spare. He hands you the delivery manifest. 47 stops today. More than usual. People who've been holding out on buying ice. It costs 25 cents for a £50 block, which is not a small amount when your wages are $4 a week, had stopped holding out. 7 days of this heat had worn down their resistance. They would go without bread before they would go without ice now. The heat had reorganized everyone's priorities. We go to the Delancey Street stops first, he says, then up to Euston, then the commercial accounts on Broadway. I'll drive. You handle the ice. This is the arrangement. You handle the ice. You, 20 years old, back of the wagon, carrying £50 blocks downstairs and through tenement hallways and up other stairs, while Mr. Hannigan drives the horse and collects the money and interact with the customers. You do not touch the money. Touching the money comes later, if you stay long enough and earn enough trust. Right now you carry ice. The ice tongs weigh about 4 pounds on their own. You pick them up from the side of the wagon and hang them on your belt. They are cold from being near the ice all night, and the cold metal against your hip through the wool fabric is briefly the best thing that has ever happened to you. Brief, like everything good today. Mr. Hannigan climbs up to the driver's bench. You climb up beside him, the ice tongs clicking against the bench slat. The horse, her name is Nell, and she is a large, grey, deeply unimpressed animal, shifts her weight but does not look at you. You and Nell have reached an accommodation. She ignores you. You do not get in her way. It works. Ready? Hannigan asks. Yes, sir. He clicks his tongue at Nell. She moves, and the wagon moves, and the day begins. Canal Street at 5 in the morning in July smells like everything that has ever existed at once. The fish market 2 blocks north has been operating since 3, and the fish smell, not bad exactly, not rotten, but intensely, absolutely fish, sits over the street like low fog. Underneath it is the smell of horse, because Canal Street has had thousands of horses on it every day for decades, and the stones hold the smell now. Underneath that is coal smoke from the early morning fires. Underneath that is garbage, the specific warm garbage of a July night that has not been collected yet, sitting in piles at the curb in wooden boxes and old barrels, already beginning its morning transformation in the heat. The sky is lightening. The east end of Canal Street, the direction of the harbour, is going from pewter to copper pink. It would be beautiful if you had time to look at it. You do look briefly from the wagon seat between the buildings, catching a stripe of that pink sky over the rooftops. Then Nell turns the corner and you are on Delancey Street and the day is fully underway. Delancey Street at 5 in the morning is already alive. This is the thing about the Lower East Side that still surprises you. 8 months in, it never completely sleeps. There is always something moving. In the Heatwave, it is worse. People who cannot sleep inside have come out and are sleeping on the fire escapes and the stoops and the strips of sidewalk in front of their buildings, and they are there in the morning half awake, fanning themselves with newspapers or just sitting with their arms on their knees and their heads down, not sleeping, not quite waking, just surviving. A woman is sitting on the front stoop of number 34, nursing a baby. She does not look up as the wagon passes. The baby does not look up either. They are both just existing in the heat, the most important transaction happening between them and everything else a distant concern. 3 men are sleeping on the fire escape above her. One has his arm hanging off the edge, dangling in the air. In the heat he has not moved, sleeping deep and hard the way only men who work all day with their bodies sleep. You see a small boy of maybe 6 sitting alone on the curb, eating something from a paper wrapper. He looks at the ice wagon with an expression that in an adult you would call longing. In a 6-year-old it is just wanting, pure and simple and unguarded. Hannigan does not slow down for the boy. You look away. First stop, 237 Delancey Street, 4th floor. You climb down from the wagon. Hannigan hands you the tongs. The first block, £50, a good cut, solid and clear at its heart, already beginning to sweat in the morning heat, already losing itself to the air. You grab the block with the tongs, set the grip, test the hold. £50 is not a small weight. 50 pounds of ice is a particular weight, dense and cold and slick, tending to slide if you do not have the tong set right. You have the tong set right. You have been doing this for 4 months. You also know that 50 pounds of ice plus the 4 pounds of the tongs is 54 pounds, that you're going to carry up 4 flights of stairs in a wool suit in July. You know this the way you know the price of bread and the distance from your building to the pump and the number of steps to the 4th floor of 237 Delancey. It is just a fact about your life. You go in through the street door, which is open. In this heat, nothing closes that does not have to. The vestibule is dark and smells of yesterday's cooking. Stairs ahead. The stairs at 237 Delancey are not wide enough for 2 people to pass each other. You go up on one side, flattening against the wall, when a woman comes down the other way with a chamber pot. She says something in Polish that might be an apology or might be a critique. You say morning and keep moving. 3rd floor landing. The gaslight has gone out. You navigate by the light coming through the window at the end of the hall, a grey gold light that makes everything look like it is under water. 4th floor, apartment 4C. You knock with your elbow because your hands are full. Wait. Footsteps inside, shuffling. The door opens and you are looking at Mrs. Abramowitz, who is 60 years old and is wearing a housecoat and her hair in a braid down her back, and an expression somewhere between grief and relief. "The ice boy," she says. "Yes, ma'am. £50 block as ordered." She steps back to let you in. The apartment, 2 rooms plus a kitchen alcove, family of 5, is hot. Not just warm, hot. The air in here has not moved since yesterday. There is a window open in the far room and not even a breath is coming through it. This is the problem with the tenements. The windows face the air shaft. The air shaft has no cross-ventilation. There is no way in, no way out. The air just sits and bakes. The icebox is in the kitchen alcove, a wooden cabinet lined with metal, about the size of a small wardrobe. You open it. The inside smells of old ice water and cheese and something that might be herring. You slide the ice block in, muscle it into the tray, let the tongs go. The cold comes off it like a gift. For 3 seconds you stand with your hands near the ice block, your face near the open icebox door, and the cold rolls over you and your body makes an involuntary sound, just a small exhalation, but Mrs. Abramowitz hears it. "Take a moment," she says. "It is a hard day." I am fine, ma'am. Take a moment, I said. You take a moment. You let the cold touch your face, your hands, your wrists where the cuffs are rolled back slightly. 3 seconds, 4, 5. Then you close the icebox door and the heat rushes back and it is over. She gives you a piece of bread from the counter, not a full slice. Half a slice, the heel of a loaf with a scrape of butter. I did not ask. I know. Go. She waves you out the door. You eat the bread going down the stairs. It is the best thing you have eaten this morning, which is not a high bar, but it is real and it matters and you do not forget it. Stop 2. 245 Delancey, 2nd floor. Stop. 3. 247, ground floor, a dairy shop. Larger block. £70. Just the one flight. But the hallway is narrow enough that you have to turn sideways to fit the ice through without scraping the walls. Stop 4. 3 Broome Street, which means walking the horse around the corner while Hannigan holds the reins and you walk alongside with the ice. Because Broome Street this time of day is too narrow for the wagon to pass when the barrel cart is also in the street. And the barrel cart is always in the street at this hour. You carry the ice block for half a block on foot. £50. The wool jacket is wet through now, not damp. Through. The fabric against your back is soaked, your shirt under it soaked, the union suit under that just beginning to take on moisture. The sweat runs from the back of your neck down between your shoulder blades and there is nothing to do about it, nowhere for it to go, no relief. The ice tongs slip slightly. You shift your grip. You keep walking. It is not yet 6 in the morning. You keep walking. By 7 in the morning you have made 11 deliveries and you have sweat through every layer you're wearing. The wool jacket is the worst of it. The jacket was designed for movement, for work, for the active life of a delivery man. Designed in the sense that someone once made a jacket out of wool and said this will do, and here you are, generations later, still doing. The wool holds your heat against you like a gift you did not ask for. Every degree your body generates, the jacket keeps. Every calorie of effort, the jacket ensures you feel it. The shirt sticks to your back. The vest is wet at the armpits and down the front. Your trousers have darkened at the waistband and behind the knees, where your legs bend and heat accumulates. Your socks, wool socks, naturally you own 2 pairs of cotton socks, and they have both gone grey from too many washings, and you're saving them for something, though you're not sure what. Your socks are wet inside your shoes. Your feet are sweating. In November, this would be concerning. In July, it is just a fact about feet. Hannigan pulls the wagon up and you climb back on the bench. He looks at you. He's been driving this route for 19 years. His face reads the damage with the same detachment with which he checks the ice blocks. Water, he says, and hands you the canteen. The canteen is tin, dark green, the kind soldiers carried in the war. He keeps it under the bench in a cloth bag that gets kept damp from a sponge he soaks at each large stop. The water inside is almost cool. Almost. 65 degrees maybe, if you're being generous. But you drink it and it hits your body like an event. Thank you, sir. He takes the canteen back and stows it. We have 3 more on Delancey and then we go up. The commercial stops. The commercial stops are his word for the restaurants and grocers and hotels uptown. The places that use large amounts of ice and pay without argument, and where he does not have to go up 4 flights of stairs, just unload at a ground floor delivery door. They are more efficient. They are also in different neighbourhoods with wider streets and more trees and occasionally a breeze. Before that, Hannigan says, we stop at Sullivan's. Sullivan's is a pump house at the corner of Delancey and Clinton where the supply's reliable and the water is clean, by Lower East Side standards, and there is shade from the building next door. It is not on the route. It never appears on the manifest. But every morning after the first stretch of deliveries, Hannigan stops the wagon at Sullivan's for 15 minutes. He has been doing it for 19 years. It is not on any schedule. It is just what happens. You've come to understand that certain survival techniques only get passed on by example. Nobody tells you to stop at Sullivan's. You just watch Hannigan stop, and you get down, and you drink water, and you let the shade touch you, and after 15 minutes you climb back up, and the morning becomes survivable again. This is the whole of the teaching. This is everything you need to know about how Peter Hannigan has driven an ice wagon for 19 years through 19 New York summers and is still standing. Sullivan's is a corner pump house built into the corner of a building with a small trough for horses and a spigot where people can fill jugs and buckets and tin cups. The shade is from the building on the north side, just enough to cover the pump itself, and a strip of sidewalk maybe 4 feet wide. There are already people here when you arrive. There will always be people here when you arrive. The pump is running. The water is cold this morning. Actually cold, not just less warm. Cold. Because the underground pipes in this city run deep enough that they hold the winter's chill well into July. And people are cupping it in their hands and drinking and filling things, and some of the younger children are just putting their heads under the spout and letting it run over their hair. Hannigan steps down from the bench and goes to the trough to let Nell drink. You go to the spigot. You hold your wrists under the flow. The cold of the water on the inside of your wrists, where the blood runs close to the surface, is something that 100 years from now somebody with medical training will explain is an actual emergency cooling technique. In 1896 you know it, because you figured it out last Tuesday by accident, when you held your wrists under the pump just because you were desperate and the cold seemed to go straight to your blood, straight into your body, cooling you from the inside. You hold your wrists there. The water runs over your hands and off your fingers and drips off your jacket cuffs onto the sidewalk. The man next to you is Mr. Shapiro from the tailor shop on Essex Street. You know him because his daughter buys ice. A small block, 25 cents every 3 days, and you deliver it. He's still wearing his work clothes, the dark trousers and vest, the shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow, which is as undressed as a man in his position ever gets. He's holding his hat in one hand and running the other hand under the pump water. 7 days, he says. Yes, sir. My shop. I have a boy fanning the cloth all day with a newspaper, just so it does not stick together from the moisture. You know what cloth does in this heat? It swells. It loses its shape. I had a suit, beautiful suit, ordered by a lawyer on Hester Street, and the coat has been hanging in my shop all week, and it is. He stops, as if the word for what has happened to the lawyer's coat is too painful to say. It is not what it was. It will cool eventually, you say, which is what you say. It is the thing everyone says. Eventually. He puts his hat back on. My wife's mother on Orchard Street. She cannot get out of bed, cannot sleep, cannot eat, just lying there in the heat. He goes back to his shop. You do not say anything about that either. You file it with the other things. The route continues uptown. This is the thing about New York in 1896 that seems relevant to understand. The city is vertical. Not in the way it will later be vertical, with skyscrapers and elevators, and the whole modern theatre of height. In 1896, the tallest building in the city is 12 stories, and it is considered an astonishing, somewhat alarming achievement. The verticality I mean is social. The city is laid out from south to north, and as you go north, as you go up the island, things change, not all at once, not dramatically street by street, but gradually, undeniably, the buildings get newer, the streets get wider, the air smells of slightly different things. The ice route goes from Delancey to Houston to Bleecker to the commercial stops on Broadway, and then back down via a different route. You cross 14 blocks of this vertical city in the course of the morning. In those 14 blocks you pass through 3 different worlds. The first world, the Lower East Side, where you live and where the first stops are. The streets narrow and crowded and always doing 6 things at once. The push carts, the women with baskets, the children in the gutters. The smell of every kind of food being sold within 10 feet of each other. Pickles and fish and bread and fruit and something frying in a pan and something else frying in a different pan. The buildings close enough to touch each other from opposite windows if you stretched. The fire escapes draped with laundry that does not dry because there is no air to move it. The language changing every block, Yiddish to Italian to Polish to the Irish English of your own neighbourhood. All of it mixing together in the street noise into something that sounds like the world arguing with itself. The second world. The middle territory around Houston Street, where the neighbourhoods are older but the buildings are slightly better, where there are small shops with glass windows and a few trees planted along the curb, and a different quality of noise. The saloons here have better signs. The restaurants have cloth on the tables. It is still poor, broadly speaking, but it is poor in a more settled, less desperate way, the way of people who have been here longer and have made arrangements. The third world, the commercial blocks on Broadway. Broadway in 1896 is not yet the Broadway of theatre marquees and electric signs. That comes later, a decade on. But it is already a main artery of commerce, and the buildings are different here. Stone facades, wide sidewalks, a different quality of light because the streets are wider and more light gets in. Women shopping, women with money, women in dresses that have more fabric than your entire wardrobe, men with silk hats, actual silk hats, walking quickly and looking like they have somewhere important to be, which they do, and like they have never carried a 50-pound block of ice up 4 flights of stairs, which they have not. You deliver ice to the kitchen entrance of a hotel on Broadway at 9 in the morning. The kitchen entrance is around the back, down a service alley, through a door that says deliveries in hand-painted letters. The cook who receives the delivery is a wide-shouldered Irishman from Galway, who went through a brief period of trying to talk to you about home before realising you were from Clare, which is practically a different country from his perspective, and now you just nod at each other. The kitchen of this hotel is large and hot. There are fires going, cooking fires, bakery ovens, the water heating for the morning service, and the heat of the kitchen plus the heat of July, plus the smell of a professional kitchen in full production is a specific and overwhelming combination. Meat and bread and coffee and ash and the wet warmth of 100 things being boiled simultaneously. But the ice locker in the kitchen is cold, and for the 2 minutes you're in there, moving the ice blocks, the cold wraps around you, and your body says, yes, this is what I wanted. This is what I have been asking for all morning. 2 minutes. Then you're back in the alley, back in the July morning, and your body has forgotten the cold immediately, the way dreams evaporate when you open your eyes. The cook leans against the door. Hot today, he says. Yesterday too, you say. My wife, he says, is keeping the children in the basement. Said it is cooler down there. Is it? Maybe by a degree, he shrugs. But she feels better doing something. He goes back inside. The door closes. You go back to the wagon. There's a horse dead on Broadway at the corner of Spring Street. It has been there since early morning from the look of it. The horse collapsed at its traces. A delivery horse for a dry goods company, still hitched to the cart, which has been pulled to the curb by a policeman who needed the street clear. The cart is blocking the sidewalk. The horse is on its side, not moving, one large dark eye open and already glazed. The policeman, young, red-faced, clearly wishing he were somewhere else, is keeping people moving. Nothing to see, he keeps saying, with the specific hopelessness of someone trying to describe a thing that manifestly is something to see. Move along. People do not move along. People slow down. People look at the horse. You look at the horse too from the wagon bench as Hannigan navigates around the blockage. The horse is huge. Was huge. Whatever it was when it was alive, that aliveness has left so completely that what remains seems like something else, like a large object rather than an animal. The flies are already gathering around the eyes and mouth. The July heat is already beginning its work. Third one today, Hannigan says, not looking. Third? I saw 2 others on the way in this morning, one on Orchard, one on Grand. He guides Nell carefully around the dead animal. Poor creatures. Nell does not look at the dead horse. She has learned not to. Or maybe horses do not make the same connections people do. You're not sure which would be sadder. What happens to it, you ask? Rendering company comes eventually. Take it to a factory up in the Bronx. Turn it into glue and soap and fertilizer. He clicks his tongue at Nell to speed up. Everything ends up useful, one way or another. You watch the dead horse shrink behind you as the wagon moves on. How long before they come for it? Hannigan thinks about this. Normal week? Same day usually? This week? He shakes his head. They are overwhelmed. The horse will be on the corner all day. By the time you come back this way in the afternoon, the smell will have changed. You already know this without being told. This is not the first week of your education in what happens when a city's systems get overwhelmed. The garbage piles up when the collection cannot keep pace. The horses lie where they fall when the removal crews are stretched. The sick fill the hospitals beyond their capacity, and some of them are turned away. Everything that the city manages on a normal day becomes visible when the city cannot manage it anymore. The machinery shows through the surface. You have been in New York 8 months, and you've already seen enough to understand. The machinery is always there. The invisible work of keeping a city running, the removal men and the water carriers and the garbage collectors and the men who render dead horses into glue. All of that invisible labour that you never see when it is working. You see it now because it has stopped keeping up. And what you see, looking at the dead horse in the July heat, is the true baseline of what a city actually costs to run. Nobody told you that before you came here. You thought the city was the buildings and the streets and the commerce. You're learning it is also the invisible workers and the invisible removal and the invisible maintenance of a system that looks inevitable until the moment it starts to fail. There is something you need to understand about this heat wave. Something that the newspapers are only beginning to print and that will only fully be understood much later, when the numbers are finally added up. It is not just hot. New York has always had hot summers. People complained. People sat on their stoops and drank lemonade and waited for the evening breeze off the harbour. But those people lived differently. Their houses were different. The old New York, the one before the waves of immigration, had streets you could walk across and parks you could sit in, and houses with front yards and backyards and some concept of airflow. The houses breathed. The new New York, the one you live in, the Lower East Side of 1896, which is the most densely populated piece of land on the entire planet Earth. Denser than Calcutta, denser than Hong Kong, denser than anywhere anyone has measured. That New York does not breathe. It cannot. There is no room to breathe. There are neighbourhoods on the Lower East Side where 400 people live in a single city block. 400 people on a block that is maybe 200 feet by 200 feet. The tenements go up 6 stories. The rooms are subdivided and subdivided again. The original families renting out corners of their apartments to newly arrived families who rent out half of their corner to an even newer family. And all of them eating and sleeping and living in a vertical stack of human existence that traps every bit of heat the sun generates and holds it, holds it, holds it. And then the heat wave came. The 10th of July it started. The city woke up to 91 degrees. People looked at each other and said, well, it will break tonight. It always breaks. It did not break. Second day 92. Third day 94. The horses started dying. Not metaphorically. Actually dying. In the street. The working horses, and there are 20,000 horses working in this city at any given moment, pulling wagons and carriages and trolley cars and omnibuses, started dying at their traces, collapsing in the heat, sometimes taking the vehicles they were attached to partway down with them. By the end of the first week, the streets of Manhattan had been blocked by dead horses in 20 different locations. By the 5th day, people were getting sick, not heat sick in the normal way, not just dizzy and tired, collapsing, dying in their apartments. The newspapers were running daily tallies. The health department was trying to keep up. Doctors were making house calls to neighbourhoods where doctors almost never went. Neighbourhoods where the existence of a doctor was a theoretical concept, where people got sick and either got better or died without ever seeing a man with a medical degree. The children went first, the very young ones, the ones in the interior rooms of the tenements, the ones with no window at all, the ones in the apartments where the families had subdivided into closets. Healthy children, getting sick in the heat and dying before anyone had time to understand what was happening. You have been filing these things away. There is always something to file away in this neighbourhood, and you have been learning to file and keep moving, because the route does not stop for grief. There is always the route to run. By 9:30 the sun is positioned to hit the north-south streets directly. The light driving straight down between the buildings, no shade from the facades. The shadows that were there an hour ago have retreated to thin strips along the building walls, and in those strips the people are thick, standing, sitting on steps, clustering in the one cool corridor that remains before the sun moves again. A woman selling water ice from a cart on the corner is doing the business of her life. Water ice, sugar syrup frozen around a stick, cost a penny. You can smell the lemon syrup from 10 feet away. There is a line 8 people deep even at this hour, and most of the people in line are children, sent by parents who could not afford a block of ice but could spare a penny for water ice, who figured a penny's worth of cold was better than nothing. You watch the line from the wagon bench as you pass. There is a girl of maybe 12 at the back of the line holding the hand of a smaller boy, maybe 4. She's wearing a dress, dark wool, the kind of winter dress that nobody should be wearing in July, but which she is wearing, because it is what she has. Her hair is up mostly in a bun at the back of her neck, and her face is the same dark red as yours. That heat flush, the one that does not go away anymore, The one that has been sitting on every face in the neighbourhood for a week. The boy is crying. Not loudly, just leaking, the way very small children do when they've been hot and miserable for so long that crying is just a thing their face does now without their full cooperation. The girl shifts his hand to the other side and puts her arm round his shoulder. The wagon passes. You do not stop. There is a route to run. But you think about the girl off and on for the rest of the morning. She becomes a kind of touchstone for the day, the way certain images do. You will think of other things, and then you will think of her, standing in line with the crying boy, in the dark wool dress, waiting for a penny's worth of cold. The deliveries continue. Stop 17, a bakery on Bleecker, where the ovens are running even in this heat. You cannot not run the ovens. People still need bread. The world still needs to eat. And the delivery door is around the back next to the oven exhaust, so that the alley behind the bakery is significantly hotter than the street in front. You bring the ice block in through 90-something degrees of alley heat. The baker, a small Italian man named Rossi, who you've met twice before, shakes his head when he sees you. "This job," he says, meaning your job, the ice delivery. "This job," you agree, meaning his job, the baking. You both stand in the alley for a moment, commiserating about your respective occupations. Two men in wool coats in a baking hot alley in July. Then you go back to the wagon, and he goes back to his ovens, and nothing has changed, but something has been acknowledged. Stop 19, a restaurant on Spring Street, ground floor delivery. Easy, no stairs. You slide the ice blocks in, and you're back at the wagon in 5 minutes, which means 5 minutes less of carrying ice, and 5 minutes more of sitting on the bench in the moving air. Moving air, even warm air, even wool-filtered warm air, is better than still air. You have learned to love the movement of the wagon. Stop 23, an apartment building on Houston Street with a woman on the 3rd floor who insists on giving you a glass of lemonade every time you deliver. The lemonade comes from a pitcher she keeps in the icebox, the whole point of having the ice. And it is cold from proximity to the ice, and tart from real lemons, and sweet from real sugar, and you drink it at her kitchen table in 3 gulps, and try not to close your eyes like a man being handed his last meal. "More?" she asks. She is Russian, this woman, from somewhere in Odessa, and she speaks English with a precision that suggests she thinks carefully about each word before deploying it. "No, thank you, ma'am. I have to keep moving." "In this heat you should drink more." She starts to pour a second glass. "I have the canteen, you say." "The canteen." She looks sceptical, the look of a woman who has fed families in difficult conditions and does not believe in the sufficiency of canteens. She pours the second glass and slides it across the table. "Drink." You drink the second glass. "Also this." She wraps a piece of bread in a cloth and hands it to you, for later. "When you're hungry." "Ma'am, really, I have 3 loaves. I can spare 1 piece. Do not argue." You take the bread. It is in your jacket pocket when you climb back on the wagon, and Hannigan sees it and says nothing. He has seen you take it. He has seen you take something at nearly every 3rd delivery, some small offering from some woman with a strong opinion about whether you're eating enough. He has never commented. He probably has his own similar deposits happening on the other end, wherever he goes while you're on the stairs. By 11 o'clock you have made 31 deliveries. The heat has been building since sunrise, the way it always builds, the sun not moving perceptibly, but its effect intensifying by the minute, so that the air at 11 feels thicker and heavier than the air at 10, and the air at 10 felt heavier than the air at 9. It is not just temperature, it is something else. The weight of the air, the humidity that the heat draws up from the river and the streets and the bodies and the ground, and hold suspended so that breathing feels like drinking something warm and insufficient. You have drunk from the canteen 4 times and from various pitchers and glasses 6 more times. You are sweating out faster than you can put in. Your mouth has been slightly salty since about 9:30, which is your body's way of telling you it is running low on salt. You know this from last week, when the same thing happened and Hannigan told you to eat salt with your food at night. You eat salt with your food at night now. Stop here a moment, Hannigan says. He's pulling Nell to the side of the street, not at a delivery address, just stopping. Here? He wraps the reins around the bench post and climbs down. 5 minutes, my back. He says this sometimes. His back. He does not elaborate. He was at Chancellorsville in 1863, which you know only because he mentioned it once and you never forgot. And whatever happened to him at Chancellorsville included something that lives in his spine and speaks to him in certain kinds of weather. He manages it with movement and with these brief stops, and he does not discuss it, and you do not ask. You climb down from the bench too, not because of your back. Your back is fine, your back is 20 years old and has not been to Chancellorsville, but because you can. Because standing on the ground for 5 minutes is different from sitting on the bench. Because your legs hurt from the stairs and your arms hurt from the ice, and being vertical without carrying anything feels like a small vacation. You stand in the narrow strip of shade along the building front and do nothing for 5 minutes. From here you can see down the block to a point where the street bends slightly. You can see a man with a pushcart selling something you cannot identify from this distance. You can see 3 women talking in a doorway, in the universal posture of women talking in doorways everywhere, leaning slightly toward each other, arms crossed. You can see a group of men sitting on a stoop doing nothing, just sitting, because in this heat doing nothing is a form of labour. And you can see, at the corner 2 blocks down, something that takes a moment to identify. A morgue wagon. You know it because the driver has the specific posture of a man who has accepted what his job is, and because there are 2 men walking behind it who have the posture of neighbourhood men who knew whoever is in the wagon, and because there is a woman standing on the stoop of a building near the corner making the movement, rocking, arms wrapped around herself, that women make in certain circumstances. You watch it turn the corner and disappear. Hannigan is at the side of the wagon, not watching, rubbing the small of his back with both hands. He has seen the morgue wagons this week. He has said nothing. Mr. Hannigan, you say. How many people have died? This week, I mean, in the heat. He stops rubbing his back. He looks at the corner where the wagon disappeared. The papers said 230, he says, as of yesterday. 230. You knew it was many. The number is different from knowing it is many. They say it will stop. It always stops. He climbs back up to the bench. Come on, we have 3 stops. The last 3 stops of the first load are on the east side, back toward the river. The fishmonger on Monroe Street needs ice to keep his display cold. He is a large, cheerful Portuguese man who handles fish all day and smells of fish all day, and has apparently never been bothered by this, which suggests either an extremely resilient temperament or a nose that gave up years ago. Good ice today, he says, poking at the block you've slid into the display case. Same as always. No, sometimes the cuts are poor, lot of air pockets, melts fast. Today's good ice. He runs his thumb along the edge of the block. Where does it come from? Upstate. They cut it from the Hudson in winter, store it in the ice houses until summer. Ah, he nods satisfied. The cold of winter, we keep it for summer. Good idea. He's not wrong, technically. The ice business is exactly that. Taking cold from winter and selling it in summer. Storing time in a sense. Selling yesterday's cold to today's heat. You think about that as you climb back on the wagon. The cold of winter, kept for summer. Right now, it does not feel like enough. The ice house on Canal Street is below street level. The entrance is down a ramp into the underground storage where the temperature is kept as low as possible by insulation and the mass of ice itself. Standing outside the ice house entrance while the boys load the second batch of ice onto the wagon, you can feel the cold air coming up the ramp. Not much, just a tendril, an exhalation of winter from underground, reaching up into the July morning. It touches your face and your hands. It is enough, just enough for one moment to remember what cold feels like. Then the ramp boys push the last ice block into position, and the cold closes up behind it, and the July heat owns everything again. The second load is harder. Not because the stops are different. Most of them are repeat customers from yesterday. Familiar faces, familiar stares, the same ice tongs, the same routine. It is harder because the morning has already happened. Your arms have been lifting since 5. Your back has been bending since 5. Your legs have been climbing since 5. The second load starts at noon and runs until 4. And the noon sun is directly overhead and the streets are at their fullest and the heat is at its worst. Noon on the Lower East Side in July. The street sounds like a thing under pressure. Every vendor is still working. They cannot stop for heat. Stopping for heat means not eating, and not eating is not an option. The pickle man's barrel is sweating in the sun, the brine starting to run warmer than it should. The bread woman's loaves went out at dawn and she's been selling all morning and what is left is hot to the touch. The fish cart, the small one that does not have a fixed spot that moves from block to block, the fish on it have been in the noon sun for an hour and everybody knows it and nobody is buying from it and the fish man knows nobody is buying and he is still pushing the cart because what else would he do? Shouting. The vendors shout their wares the way vendors always do, but the shouts are slightly shorter now. The voice is slightly more ragged. The energy just slightly less than in the morning. Nobody can sustain full volume in this heat for hours, and under the shouting something else. A kind of grinding quality to the noise, the sound of a neighbourhood in stress. Children crying more than usual. You get used to a baseline of childhood crying in a neighbourhood this dense. This is more than the baseline. Voices raised in apartments above you. A crash from one building, glass or a pot, impossible to tell. The street is hard under the wagon wheels. The cobblestones have been absorbing heat since dawn, and give back that heat from below, so that the air at ankle level is different from the air at chest level, the ground radiating up, the sun pressing down, you in the middle carrying 50 pounds of ice that is already beginning to melt faster than it should. You carry it faster. Hannigan has told you, in this heat every minute outside counts. Move quickly, minimize exposure, get the ice in before it sweats itself into nothing. You move quickly, but quickly has a cost. Quickly means you are breathing harder, which means you are taking in more hot air, which means your body is working harder to process it, which means you sweat more, which means you lose more water. It is a loop you cannot quite escape. The solution to the heat is also a form of submission to the heat. Stop 34, 67 Essex Street, 5th floor. No elevator. Obviously no elevator. Elevators are for hotels and department stores, not for tenements. You take the stairs. 5 flights. £50 block. The stairs in this building are narrow and dark and smell of decades of cooking. The gas light on the second floor landing is broken. The third floor landing has a broken step that you have learned to step around. 5th floor, apartment 5A. You knock, wait, knock again. The door opens slowly. Inside is a woman you've not seen before at this address. Usually it is a man, a barrel-chested German named Fischer who works nights and sleeps days and always looks slightly confused by daylight. This woman is not Fischer. She's older, maybe 65, small, with white hair and the specific thinness of old age that suggests she was once a larger person. "Ice?" she says. "From the Manhattan Ice Company. Yes, ma'am. £50 block standing order." She steps back. The apartment is dark. She's got the shutters closed on the window to keep the sun out, which keeps the direct heat out but also means no airflow. The room is warm and dim and smells of something floral, lavender maybe, that has been burned or sprinkled to cover other smells. "My brother is not home," she says. "He went to work early, had to cover for someone." She leads you to the kitchen alcove where the icebox is. "He said to accept the delivery. Forgive me, I do not know where he keeps." She looks around the kitchen, slightly lost. You open the icebox, which you know from previous deliveries, and slide the ice in. "There," you say. She looks at the icebox. "My brother says it is the most important purchase he makes each month. The ice." She says it as if this is strange to her. "I thought he was exaggerating." "He is not," you say. She looks at you. Small eyes, blue, slightly watery with age. "Are you cooler for being near the ice? In your work?" You think about this honestly. Sometimes, for a moment. Just a moment. "Yes, ma'am." She nods slowly. "My husband," she says, and then stops. Starts again. "We had an icebox in Munich. In summer. It was very nice." She looks at the icebox. "He would have enjoyed this." She says it without particular sadness. Just as a fact. The husband is not here, and the icebox is here, and one of them is present and one is not. "I am sorry for your loss," you say. "Thank you." She holds out a coin. You gesture at it. "All settled, ma'am. The company collects by the month." "Oh." She looks at the coin in her hand. Then she takes your hand and puts the coin in it. Her hand is dry and cool at light. "For you, then. For climbing those stairs. A dime." You look at it. "Ma'am, that is not—" "Take it." She closes your fingers around it. "In this heat, take it. Buy yourself something cold." You take the coin. Going down the stairs, 5 flights, your knees aching, your back talking to you, the dime in your breast pocket and the ice tongs clinking against the step on the second floor landing. You think, "In this heat, take it." You think about that for a while. Stop 39 is on Stanton Street, and it is the worst stop of the day. Not because of the ice. The ice delivery is the same as everywhere else. £50 block, 4 flights, tight hallway, familiar ice box. The ice is in, and you're back on the landing in 8 minutes. It is the smell. On the 3rd floor landing of this building, coming down from the 4th, there is a smell. You know it instantly. You've been in this city 8 months, and you have been around this neighbourhood and this building, and you know this smell now. The way you did not know it when you arrived in November. The way you do know it now in July. It is a smell like copper and old meat and something sweet and terrible underneath. It is the smell that means someone is on the other side of one of these doors who has been on the other side of that door for too long without anyone checking on them. You stand on the 3rd floor landing and you breathe the air carefully, trying to locate it. The door directly to your left. 3B, you knock. Wait. Knock harder. Nothing. You go back down to the second floor where a family lives that you've delivered to twice. You knock on their door. The woman who answers has a baby on her hip and flour on her hands and looks at you with the expression of someone who is managing several things and does not need another one. The apartment above, you say. 3B. Do you know who lives there? She shifts the baby. Old man, Mr. Stern, lives alone. I have not seen him since, she thinks. Since Monday, I think. Maybe Sunday. Today is Friday. He has family? A daughter in Brooklyn. My husband wrote down her address when Mr. Stern first moved in 2 years ago, in case. She does not say in case of what. She does not need to. My husband took it to work. I would have to find it. I will get the landlord, you say. You do not get the landlord. You get Mr. Hannigan, who gets a policeman he knows from the neighbourhood. The policeman, a heavy-set Irishman named Callahan, takes one sniff at the third-floor landing and says a word in Irish that you do not know but understand by context, and then goes to find the building superintendent. The superintendent is a small, worried man who takes out a large ring of keys with the air of someone who has done this before and would prefer not to be doing it again. They open the door. You do not go in, you stay on the landing. You do not need to go in to understand what happened. You do not need to understand more than what you already understand, which is that Mr. Stern, who lived alone, who his neighbour had not seen since Monday at the latest, who the heat has been sitting on top of for a week, who was old, did not survive the week. The policeman comes back out of the apartment and closes the door behind him. He takes a moment on the landing looking at nothing. I have to call it in, he says to nobody. We will go, Hannigan says. Callahan looks at you. You found it. The smell, you say, carrying the ice. I just knocked. He nods. There is something in his face. Not gratitude exactly, but acknowledgement. Better than nobody knocking. You ride the wagon in silence for 2 blocks after that. Hannigan does not say anything. He guides Nell through the afternoon traffic, the horses moving sluggishly in the heat, the street more passable than it was this morning because the vendors have thinned, and you sit beside him not saying anything either. Then Hannigan says, he was not the first this week. No. Old men alone are the worst of it. Old women too sometimes. The ones who live alone, nobody checking in on them. He says this not accusingly. Not to you specifically, not to anyone specific, just as a fact about how things are. The daughter in Brooklyn, you say. Someone will get word to her. He clicks his tongue at Nell. Nothing to do about it now. There is nothing to do about it now. There never is anything to do about the thing that has already happened. You can only move forward into the things that have not happened yet, carrying the ice, making the deliveries, stopping when someone knocks on the right door at the right time. You made a dime today for climbing stairs. Mr. Stern on the 3rd floor of Stanton Street is dead. Both of these things are true. Both of these things are the day. By 2 in the afternoon, the city is doing something you have only seen it do in this heat wave. It is going quiet. Not fully quiet. It is never fully quiet. But a certain portion of the normal noise has dropped away. The vendors have gone in, some of them. The street is still full of people, but they are moving slower, the way people move when they have given up the fiction that speed will help them. A dog sleeps in the middle of the sidewalk on Orchard Street, and people step around it because the dog has the right idea, and everyone who steps around it slightly envies it. The children are less visible. This is the thing you notice most. In the mornings, the streets are full of children in the way cities always are. The loose, chaotic energy of children running and shouting and being underfoot. By 2 o'clock, many of them have been taken inside. The smart parents have brought them into the coolest place they can find, which often means the ground floor of the building, or the basement if there is one. The temperature differential between the 5th floor and the ground floor of a tenement in this heat is meaningful. Maybe 5 degrees, maybe more. 5 degrees is the difference between surviving and not sometimes. You know about one child who is not going to make it. You do not know it exactly. You do not know the name. But you heard something, passing through the back court of a building on Ludlow Street. Something a woman said to another woman in Yiddish. You do not speak Yiddish, but you are learning, the way everyone in this neighbourhood learns a few words of Yiddish, and what you caught was the word for child, and the word that means gone, and the way the second woman made a sound that had no language in it at all. You walked faster through that courtyard. You think of it now, sitting on the wagon bench while Hannigan negotiates at the door of a dry goods store for a delivery they claim they did not order, and he claims they did. You think of the woman making that sound, the sound that had no language. The heat has been here for 7 days. The newspapers are keeping account. You have seen it. One of the boys on the corner sells the papers, and sometimes you get a look at the front page as you pass. The numbers go up each day. You have stopped counting days when you realize the number will keep climbing. The last delivery of the afternoon is to a pharmacy on Grand Street, ground floor, a commercial account, easy unloading. The pharmacist is a thin man named Dr. Greenfield. Not a doctor exactly, but he uses the title and nobody corrects him, who dispenses medicines and also, during this heat wave, sells something he is calling electrocooling compounds, which are essentially salt dissolved in mineral water and which he is charging 40 cents a bottle for. You see them on the counter as you pass through to the back room. Is that working, you ask? The compounds? He looks at you with the expression of a man who has given this careful thought. The salt and mineral water? Yes, the electrocooling part. He picks up a bottle and looks at it as if seeing it for the first time. Less certain, but people feel better buying something. He puts the bottle back. You look like you could use one, free of charge. Salt water? Precisely. Your body is losing minerals in this heat. Salt water replenishes them. The difference between surviving the day and not surviving it sometimes. He pours a glass from one of his bottles. Drink it. You drink it. It tastes like the sea slightly, with a mineral undertone that might be the electra part or might just be the water. Better? He asks. And actually, something settles in your body slightly, like a scale rebalancing, like your blood has been looking for something and found it. A little, you say. Good. He takes the glass back. Come back tomorrow, on the house. He looks at you over the counter, this thin pharmacist with his bottles of salt water and his borrowed title. You are the ice boy, he says. Hannigan's boy. Yes, sir. You found the old man on Stanton Street today. Word travels. Word always travels. You've been learning this since November. In this neighbourhood, with this density of human beings, information moves faster than the wagons. I just knocked, you say. Yes. He straightens the bottles on the counter. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes just knocking is the whole of it. He waves you out. You go. At 4:30 you bring the wagon back to the stable on Canal Street. Nell goes into her stall and immediately puts her nose in her water trough and drinks for a long time. You watch her and feel the specific fellowship of a creature who has worked all day in the heat and is now putting that heat behind them with the single-minded focus it deserves. Hannigan tallies the day's receipts at the back of the wagon. He does this sitting on a short stool, writing in a small leather-bound ledger with a stub of pencil he keeps in his breast pocket. He writes slowly and carefully, the way men of his generation write, with full awareness that mistakes cost time. You unload the empty ice compartment, rinse it with water from the stable pump, stack the equipment. The tongs go on their hook. The canvas tarps go folded in the bin. The collection bags go on the nail. It is the same at the end of every day. Put things where they belong so the morning starts correctly. This is the only philosophy Mr. Hannigan has ever stated directly. Put things where they belong so the morning starts correctly. You have come to understand it applies to more than the equipment. Hannigan closes the ledger. 47 deliveries, he says. 46 accepted. 1 dispute. Yes, sir. He stands up from the stool slowly with the particular care of a man managing his back around a long day. You did well today, he says. You wait. He does not elaborate. Particularly on Stanton Street. I just knocked. You knocked. He picks up the ledger and stows it under the wagon seat. A lot of people would have walked past. Nobody wants to find what you found. He walks toward the stable door. Tomorrow, same time, he says. Yes, sir. He leaves. You stand in the empty stable for a moment, listening to the horses in their stalls. Nell is still at her water. In here it is slightly cooler than the street. The stable has thick walls and a high ceiling and no direct sun at this hour, and the animals themselves produce a specific warmth that is somehow different from the heat outside. Animal warmth rather than ambient heat. The warmth of living things in their natural condition. You stay a moment longer than you need to. Then you walk back to the tenement. Delancey Street at 5 in the afternoon. The street is different now from what it was at dawn. The morning has happened. The full day has happened. The vendors who are still out look as if they have run a race and finished it. The women on the stoops have been sitting there long enough to become part of the architecture. The children who are visible are slower, quieter, less childlike in their movement, worn down by the heat to something more like small adults. And through all of it, the noise continues. The city does not go quiet at 5 o'clock. It shifts. The work noise fades and the social noise rises. Voices from open windows, music from a saloon 2 blocks over, a group of young men on the corner who've been there all afternoon working up the energy for the evening. You walk through it on the way home, your jacket over your arm, your shirt stuck to your back, your feet aching. You walk slowly because you have walked quickly all day, and your body is cashing in a debt. At the corner of Delancey and Clinton, you stop at the pump. The evening line is forming, families coming for their water for supper, women with buckets, a young man with a yoke carrying 2 large jugs. The pump is busy. You wait your turn, fill your tin cup 4 times, drink 4 times, refill it 1 more time to carry home. While you're waiting, you notice a small boy sitting at the base of the pump housing, leaning against the stone, doing nothing. He's maybe 7 years old. Dark hair, dark eyes, Italian maybe or Jewish, hard to tell. He's not crying, he's not sleeping, he's just sitting, watching the people at the pump with an expression of complete exhaustion that you recognize because it is on every face in the neighborhood today, including yours. You fill your cup 1 more time. You hold it out to the boy. He looks at the cup, looks at you. He takes it with both hands and drinks it all without stopping and hands it back. You fill it again and drink it yourself. Nothing is said. The boy is still sitting there when you leave. The tenement courtyard at 5:45. Mrs. Bukowski is sitting on the steps that lead to the back entrance, fanning herself with a folded newspaper. She has changed into a lighter housecoat than this morning. Lighter, meaning slightly thinner, not exactly cool, but making a gesture toward coolness. She has a glass of water beside her. The glass is sweating in the heat. "Malone," she says. "Evening. You look like you work today." "I work today." "Sit." She gestures at the step below her. "You sit." Your legs as grateful in an animal way, the bones of your knees and ankles sighing. "Hot tomorrow too," she says. "It is not a question." "So they say." She fans herself. The newspaper makes a sound like a small wing. "My mother used to say," she says, in the reflective tone of someone who has been sitting still long enough to go back in memory, "that God sends the heat to teach patience. Did it work?" She looks at you sidelong. "What do you think?" You do not answer. She fans herself. "In Warsaw, summers were hot too. Not like this. Different hot. But people complain the same." She pauses. "People always complain the same. Is that wisdom, Mrs. Bukowski?" "That is 60 years of listening." She waves the newspaper. "Go. Wash your face. Supper at 7:30. You climb to your feet, joints protesting, and go in through the back door to the stairs. Your room, the same room. The wet mattress, the trunk, the basin, the photograph of your family on the table, your mother's slightly smeared face. You strip down to your union suit standing in the middle of the floor. The wool trousers fall with a heavy sound. They are more water than wool at this point. The vest peels off. The shirt has to be pulled away from your back with both hands, the fabric having bonded itself to your skin through 8 hours of work. The last layer, the union suit, wet through at the waist and collar and wrists. You pour the remainder of the water in the basin over your hands. You wipe your face with a cloth. You sit on the edge of the mattress. The mattress is wet. This is your mattress. This is your life. But the room is slightly cooler than the street. The sun has moved off this side of the building. The air shaft outside the window is creating very faintly something like a draft, which means that if you put your face near the window, you can feel the faintest movement of air. Not cool air, not refreshing air, just moving air. You put your face near the window. The air moves past your face like a hand passing over. It is something. You wash the shirt in the basin. Actually do it this time. Cold water and the nub of soap and your hands working the fabric against itself, the wash water going grey almost immediately. You rinse it, wring it out, hang it from the nail by the door where it will drip for an hour and then be damp until morning and then maybe dry by noon tomorrow, and then you will wear it again. This is the cycle of the shirt. It is not a beautiful cycle, but it is a cycle you know. Your hands work in the wet fabric. This is what your hands know now. Ice tongs and wet shirt. Cold of ice, heat of summer. The hands in the middle making the negotiations. You shave. Standing at the small mirror, the razor scraping carefully at the 2-day growth. The cool of the water from the basin on your face. Shaving requires concentration in a way that is almost restful. You cannot think about anything else while shaving. Not efficiently, not safely. And so for 10 minutes your mind goes narrow and quiet and focused on the 3 inches of skin in front of the blade. You shave. You look at yourself afterward. Less like a drowned rat. More like what you actually are. A 20-year-old delivery man from Clare who has worked a long day in a heatwave and is getting ready for supper. Not bad considering. Supper at Mrs. Bukowski's is a communal affair. She feeds 4 of her boarders, you and a man named Kowalczyk who works at a furniture factory in Brooklyn, and comes home every evening grey with wood dust, and the Marchetti brothers, who share a room on the second floor and work together at a construction site in Queens. The 5 of you eat together at the large table in the back kitchen, which is the coolest room in the building for reasons having to do with the position of the walls relative to the afternoon sun. Tonight it is boiled chicken with potatoes and a cabbage salad with vinegar. The chicken is tender, the potatoes are good. The cabbage salad is cold. Mrs. Bukowski made it this morning and kept it on ice in the small wooden box she keeps on the kitchen floor. Not a proper ice box, just a box with ice in it. An improvised solution. The cold cabbage in the vinegar is the best thing you've eaten all day. All 5 of you eat more or less in silence. Eating takes priority over conversation in this heat. Eating is what your body needs and everything else can wait. The elder Marchetti brother, Giuseppe, who is 30 and speaks English reasonably well, looks up from his plate at one point and says, "They say it breaks this weekend." Everyone looks at him. "Who says?" Kowalczyk asks. "The foreman. His brother works at the weather office." "The weather office?" Kowalczyk's tone suggests skepticism. "He says the wind shifts Saturday, comes from the north." "Last Saturday they said that too," the younger Marchetti brother says. Silence. "Still," Giuseppe says, "maybe this time." Nobody agrees out loud. Everyone is thinking about it. The younger Marchetti brother goes back to his chicken. Mrs. Bukowski refills everyone's water glass from the pitcher. The water is cool from having been in the cellar. She fills your glass twice. You drink it both times. After supper you help clear the table. This is not required. The other men do not. But Mrs. Bukowski is 63 years old, and it is 90 degrees, and she just cooked a meal for 5 people, and something in your upbringing from County Clare makes it impossible to sit while an old woman clears dishes. She notices. She says nothing. But when she hands you the last of the cold cabbage from the serving bowl, she does it specifically, not as a general offer, but as a particular thing handed to a particular person. You eat it standing at the kitchen counter. "Your mother," she says, stacking plates, "taught you something." "She tried," you say. "It took," she says. "There is something you want to understand about the wool, and about why you are wearing it, and about why everyone you know is wearing it, because it is easy. Easy from a comfortable distance, easy from another century. To look at people sweating through heavy fabric in 94 degrees and ask, why? Why did nobody simply take it off? Why did nobody wear less? The answer is not one thing. It is several things. The first thing is money. Wool, in 1896, is what working people can afford. Not because wool is cheap. A good wool suit costs real money, significant money. But because wool is durable. A set of woolwork clothes properly maintained lasts 3 years, maybe 4. Cotton wears faster. Linen is more expensive. The lightweight summer fabrics in the shop windows, the pale linens and thin cottons that the wealthy wear in summer, those cost more per garment and last less time. For someone earning $4 a week, the economics of clothing are simple and brutal. Buy what lasts. The second thing is convention. The rules about clothing in 1896 are not suggestions. They are enforced by a combination of social pressure and genuine belief in their necessity. You button your collar because an unbuttoned collar is indecent. You wear the jacket because a man without his jacket in public is presenting himself poorly. You keep the vest on because the vest is part of the outfit, and removing it would be the same as arriving partially dressed. These are not arbitrary rules. They are the load-bearing structures of a social order, and taking them down, even in 94 degrees, is not a decision you make casually. The rich can afford eccentricity, the poor cannot. The third thing is wool itself, which is more complicated than it seems. Real wool, the kind made from actual sheep, not the processed synthetic versions that come a century later, is a remarkable fibre. Its structure at the microscopic level is a series of overlapping scales like fish scales, and between those scales are tiny air pockets that act as insulation. In cold weather, this insulation traps your body heat and keeps you warm. In warm weather, the same structure wicks moisture away from your skin and lets it evaporate, which cools you. It breathes in the specific way that wool breathes. In 94 degrees, this function has been overwhelmed. The wool is doing its best. The wool is working as designed. But it was designed for the cool green hills of Ireland and Scotland, for the wet autumns and mild summers of the British climate, not for the New York street in July, when the cobblestones are giving back the sun and there is no wind and the humidity from the river is sitting on your shoulders like a second coat. The wool is not wrong. The climate is wrong. That distinction between something designed correctly and something deployed incorrectly is one that will take another century to fully understand. By then the problem will be solved in other ways. But in 1896, everyone in a wool suit in July is making the same quiet compromise, enduring what the fabric cannot solve, surviving through the gap between what the material was designed for and what the weather demands. You are just one of them. Evening, you go out, not to the saloon, not to anything organised or scheduled, you just go out. The tenement in the evening is not a place for staying in. The rooms hold the day's heat and breathe it out slowly all night. Going outside is not necessarily cooler. The street has been radiating heat all day too, the cobblestones giving back what the sun gave them. But outside there is at least the possibility of movement, of air that is trying to move even if it is not quite managing it. The street at 8 in the evening. Groups of men on stoops, women on chairs in doorways with their children, young people walking in the slow, aimless way of hot evenings, a boy playing a fiddle on the corner, not well but with enthusiasm, playing something that might be a reel or might be something else entirely. You walk east toward the river. The river is the reason you have come, the reason everyone comes east on summer evenings. The East River is not a beautiful river. It is a working river, full of boat traffic and the industrial detritus of a working harbour city. But at the waterfront the air is different. There is a breeze. There is almost always a breeze at the waterfront, even in the worst of summer weeks. The air comes off the water and it carries the smell of the river with it, the salt and mud and deep cold smell of water that runs from somewhere north of the city, down past the docks and piers, out toward the harbour. You walk to the waterfront and stand at the railing of a pier, and the breeze touches your face, not cold, not even close to cold, but moving air, cooler than the still air of the streets by several degrees, carrying the smell of water. You close your eyes. There is a specific quality to the evening breeze off the river. It touches the skin of your face and your hands. The only skin exposed to the air, everything else buried under layers of fabric. And the contrast between the covered warmth of the wool and the small liberty of the face and hands is so acute that it becomes almost sensory overload. Your face feels everything, every slight change in the air, every degree of difference. You stand there. Other people are there too. This is a popular evening destination, the waterfront in this heat. Families spread on the pier with blankets, children lying on their stomachs watching the water, men in shirt sleeves. They have taken the jackets off. Out here, away from the social strictures of the street, leaning against the railing in the evening air. A woman near you is holding her baby over the railing so the river breeze touches the baby's face. The baby is quiet. There is a man on the pier who's playing a concertina. He is Italian, this man, older. His concertina, the kind of battered instrument that has been played for decades, that knows its own music and plays it regardless of the fingers. He is playing something slow, something that has a sadness to it, but not a desperate sadness. More like a comfortable sadness, the kind of sadness that lives in very old songs, the kind that predates individual grief and becomes something larger and less sharp. More like weather than like pain. People gather loosely. Not a performance exactly, more like a gravitational effect. People near the man slow down, and people who have slowed down find themselves stopping, and people who have stopped find themselves listening. You stop and listen. The song goes on. The river moves below. The breeze touches your face. Somewhere on the water a tugboat sounds its horn, low and long, and the sound mixes with the concertina and the evening and the accumulated exhaustion of the day, and becomes something that is almost too much to hold. You lean on the railing and let it be too much for a moment. 7 days of heat. 230 dead as of yesterday. An old man alone on the 3rd floor of Stanton Street. A woman rocking on her stoop. A girl in a dark wool dress, standing in line with a crying boy, waiting for a penny's worth of cold. The breeze off the water, the concertina, the river. You let yourself feel it all for a moment and then you let it go. The way you always let things go eventually. The way you have learned to in 8 months of York, because the city does not stop for feeling, and you have to move at the city's speed or fall behind. You let it go, and you watch the river instead. The river in the evening light is bronze and green, the sun behind you to the west catching the water at an angle that makes it look alive. A barge is moving slowly downstream, low in the water with cargo, the bargeman at the stern with a long pole. Smaller boats weave around it. A ferry is crossing from the Brooklyn side, full of people heading home from work. Their faces turn toward the Manhattan shore with a specific expression of people who've been doing this crossing for years and have long since stopped looking at the view. All of these people, the bargeman, the ferry passengers, the families on the pier, all of them sweating through the same wool and cotton, all of them going to the same tenements and row houses and rooming houses, all of them going to lie in the same wet mattresses and wake in the same heat. All of them doing this, all of them surviving it. You look at the people on the pier, an old man and woman sitting on a blanket sharing something from a cloth bag, passing it between them with the ease of 2 people who've been sharing things for decades and no longer need to discuss the allocation. A group of young women, factory girls probably, dressed in the particular combination of wanting to look nice and cannot afford to look nice that characterizes working-class young women everywhere, walking together and talking and occasionally laughing at something one of them has said. 3 children playing some game near the railing, a game involving pointing at the boats and arguing about something in rapid Italian. These people are tired. You can see it in how they carry themselves, but they're also here, on the pier, in the evening, making the best of the evening that the day has left them. That is something. That is in fact quite a lot. You stand there for another half hour, then you walk home, but you do not go in, not yet, instead you go up. The roof access at your building is a wooden door at the top of the back stairs, the kind of door that's always slightly ajar in summer, because the heat makes the wood swell, and it never quite closes anymore. You push it open and climb out onto the flat tar roof. The roof at 9 in the evening. People are up here. You expected them to be. 3 families have spread their blankets in the corners, the adults lying flat, the children restless, sitting up and lying down and sitting up again in the way of children who are too hot to sleep but too exhausted to stay awake. Someone has brought a chair up, a regular kitchen chair, incongruous up here on the tar roof under the sky, and an elderly man is sitting in it with his eyes closed, face tilted upward, feeling the slightly better air of the rooftop. The air is better up here, by maybe 2 degrees, maybe 3. The roof is open, and above the level of the buildings there is occasionally a breath of something that might generously be called wind, a brief movement that is gone before you can fully register it. But it comes, intermittently, and it is worth being here for. You find a corner of the roof with no one in it, and sit down with your back against the low parapet, facing east, facing the river. From here you can see the bridges, the Brooklyn Bridge, completed in 1883, just 13 years ago, still a marvel to anyone who walks across it or looks at it, still impossible seeming in its scale, is lit at its towers by gas lamps, and in the dark the towers rise above the rest of the skyline with a kind of authority, like things that have always been there and will always be there. The cables drop from the towers in long curves, and the lights along the bridge deck make a line across the darkness, and in this light it looks less like a structure and more like a drawing of a structure, something geometric and perfect, something imagined rather than built. The river below it is dark and full of lights. The boats carry lanterns. The piers have gas lamps. The warehouses along the waterfront have windows lit from inside. The whole waterfront glows dimly, warmly, like a city that has not quite decided to sleep. You sit and look at it. You sit up here for 20 minutes, maybe 30, in the slightly better air of the rooftop, looking at the Brooklyn Bridge and the lit river and the darkness beyond, and you think about the day, not in an organised way, not in the way of someone making an account or drawing lessons, just thinking about it the way your mind does when it has some room to move, going back over the morning and the deliveries and Mrs. Abramowitz and the cold of the icebox door and the dime from the old woman and Hannigan's face when you told him about the exchange and the thing on the 3rd floor of Stanton Street and the morgue wagon and the girl in the wool dress and Hannigan saying put things where they belong so the morning starts correctly, and the fishmonger saying the cold of winter kept for summer, and the pharmacist saying sometimes just knocking is the whole of it. All of these things happen today. All of them happened to you, Thomas Malone, 20 years old, from County Clare, carrying ice in July. In a city of 500,000 people, in a summer that is trying to kill everyone, on a roof from which you can see the greatest bridge in the world. You think, I am here. Whatever else I do not know about this city and this country and this life I am finding my way into, I am here. I came here with nothing, and I have learned something. I know how to carry 50 pounds up 5 flights. I know how to hold my wrists under the pump water. I know to stop at Sullivan's. I know which suppliers Hannigan trusts and which ones pad their invoices, and I know the weight of good ice versus bad ice, and I know the smell on a 3rd floor landing that means something has gone wrong behind a door. I know these things. I did not know them in November. You sit on the roof until the clock on the church, 2 blocks north, strikes 10, and then you go back downstairs. Your room. You lie down in your union suit on the wet mattress without undressing further, because undressing further takes energy, and you have spent everything you had on the day. The window. 8 inches. The faintest movement from the air shaft. You will not sleep immediately, you know this. You did not sleep well for 6 nights running, and you will not sleep well tonight. The heat will not allow deep sleep. You will doze and surface and doze again, sweating steadily through the night, the mattress getting wetter and wetter, until it is as wet as it's going to get, and then it will just be wet consistently, the new baseline. But you will sleep enough. You have been sleeping enough. Enough to work. Enough to carry ice and climb stairs and knock on doors. Enough to get through the next day and the next day. Enough is what you're working with. In the dark of the room, lying on the wet mattress, listening to the building settle and breathe around you. The building talks at night. Not loudly, but the wood and plaster have a vocabulary of small sounds. A crack here, a settling there, the pipes contracting slightly as the temperature differentials between day and night shift. Behind the walls, mice are doing what mice do. Through the floor, from the apartment below, the muffled sound of a woman singing something quietly, just the faintest outline of a tune. From somewhere above, from the roof or the upper floors, voices, laughter, people sleeping on the roof again. Every night of this heat wave there have been people on the roof, families dragging their blankets up the top flight to sleep under the open sky. In theory, the landlord does not allow it. In practice, the landlord lives in a better neighbourhood and comes here only to collect rent. The building breathes. The building is alive with 43 families doing their various nighttime things, sleeping and not sleeping and feeding babies and lying awake and dreaming and worrying and doing the small private things people do when the day is over and the night has not yet released them. You are one of them. There is a passage in the Bible. Your mother used to read it on Sunday evenings in Clare, in the particular voice she reserved for things she wanted you to remember, about the lilies of the field, how they toil not, neither do they spin. The implied lesson being, do not worry, God will provide. You've been thinking about this passage differently lately. The lilies of the field do not toil, but the families in these apartments toil constantly. The women who wake at 4 to start the cooking, who carry water from the pump twice a day, who wash the clothes and mind the children and keep the household together with a budget that barely reaches the next week. The men who work 12-hour days in the factories and the construction sites and the delivery routes, who come home and eat whatever is put in front of them and fall into their beds. The children who carry coal up to the stoves and sweep the stairs and run errands and grow up fast in the compressed space of the tenement floors. Nobody in this building toils not. And yet God has not provided for Mr. Stern on the 3rd floor of Stanton Street, who died alone in the heat, who waited for someone to notice, who waited 7 days for someone to knock. You do not have a theology that resolves this. You have not yet had the time or the education to construct one. What you have is the simple weight of the day and the heat and the 230 dead and the knowledge that tomorrow it will be the same again. And somehow, from somewhere inside you that you could not locate on a map, you find that this does not destroy you. You find that you can carry it, that the day with all that it contained, the ice and the tongs and the stairs and the smell on the 3rd floor and the dime and the lemonade and the cold of the icebox and the woman making the sound that had no language, that all of it fits inside you, the way the day fits inside the night, contained, bearable, not light but bearable. You've been in New York 8 months. You do not know yet what you will become here. You do not know if you will stay. You do not know if the city will build you up or grind you down or leave you somewhere in the middle, neither built nor broken, just shaped. You do not know if there is something waiting for you at the other end of the apprenticeship. some version of the life you imagined when you got off the boat in November. You do not know any of that. But you know the route, you know the tongs, you know which pump water is cleanest and which landing has the broken step, and which customer always offers lemonade, and which one will try to underpay for the delivery. You know to stop at Sullivan's. You know to put things where they belong so the morning starts correctly. You know enough to get through tomorrow, and tomorrow you will know a little more, and the day after that, a little more still. This is how you survive New York. This is how everyone survives New York. One day, one more day, building a life the way the ice melts, gradually, from the outside in, until what you started with is unrecognizable, but what you have made is yours. The wet mattress, the air from the window, the sounds of the building settling. Outside, the city does its nighttime things. Somewhere in the maze of streets between here and the harbour, a night watchman is walking his rounds on Orchard Street, swinging his lantern, finding everything as it should be except for the dead horse at the corner of Grand that still has not been collected, which he has walked past now 4 times tonight, which he will report in the morning, and which will be dealt with, eventually, when the crews catch up. A baker on Bleecker Street is loading the first trays of the morning's bread into the oven, and the heat from the oven is indistinguishable from the heat of the room, and the baker is sweating as he works and thinking about nothing except the bread, which is what you think about at 4 in the morning in front of an oven. A nurse at the Children's Hospital on East 3rd Street is making her rounds, checking her charts, stopping at the bed of a girl who has been sick from the heat, and who tonight has a temperature 3 degrees lower than yesterday, and the nurse writes this in her ledger, and does not smile exactly, but something in her face smooths out, just briefly, because the direction matters. A waterman has tied up his boat at a downtown pier, and is sleeping on deck, which is cooler than any room in any building, the river breeze moving over him, and in his sleep his hands are still working the oars, the way they do every night, the body remembering what the mind lets go of. A young woman at a factory on Allen Street is still at her sewing machine at 10 o'clock at night, working by candlelight on a piece rate, because the factory hours run as late as people will stand for and longer, and the heat in the factory room is no worse than the heat of the street, and the money is real, and she will sew until her eyes give out, and then she'll go home and sleep and come back and sew again tomorrow. All these people, all these nights, all of them making it through this one the way you make it through this one. By keeping going, by finding the small cool moments and holding on to them, by knowing the heat will break and that morning will come and that the next step is always survivable, even when the whole journey seems impossible. This is what survival looks like. Not heroic, not picturesque, not interesting from the outside to anyone who does not understand that surviving a thing is its own kind of achievement. You survive the heat by carrying ice and drinking water and standing at the pump with your wrists under the flow. You survive the wool by understanding that you will take it off eventually, that the evening always comes, that the river breeze is always there. You survive New York by doing one day at a time, the way everyone does, the way everyone always has, the way everyone always will. One day, then one more after that. In a few days the weather will break. It will not be Saturday, despite what Giuseppe said, but it will not be long. The wind will shift. The temperature will drop 20 degrees in an hour. People will come out of their apartments into the rain. It will rain, finally, properly. The kind of soaking summer rain that the city has been refusing for a week, and stand in it with their faces up, not caring about the wet, not caring about anything except the cold water on their faces. You will be on the wagon when it starts. The rain will hit the ice blocks and run off them and drip from the back of the wagon, and Nell will shake her mane and sneeze, and Hannigan will look up at the sky for a long moment before looking back at the road. He will not say anything. He will not need to. The ice house will see their orders drop. Cold summer weather means less ice. Hannigan will mention this with the equanimity of a man who has been in a seasonal business long enough to understand that the seasons always come back. The morgue wagons will slow down, not stop. The city always has its dead, but slow. The numbers in the paper will start going the other way. Mr. Stern's daughter will come from Brooklyn. You will not be there for it. But you will know it happened because the woman from the second floor will mention it, weeks later, in passing, the way people mention things in tenement buildings, where everyone knows everyone's business eventually. His daughter came, she will say, took what was worth taking. The rest went to charity, that will be all. That will be the whole story of Mr. Stern from your perspective. But for now, for tonight, it is not yet the end of the heat wave. Tomorrow will be hot again, the same as today, the same as the 7 days before, and you'll be up before 5, and you will put on the wet-through wool, and you will button the collar, and you will go meet the wagon. Let me tell you something about ice, since you are spending the day carrying it. The ice in that wagon was cut from the Hudson River last February, when the ice on the Hudson is thick enough, 2 feet, sometimes more, to support the weight of men and horses and the heavy wooden sleds they use to haul the blocks. The ice cutters go out before dawn in temperatures that would stop a sensible person in their tracks, wearing their own version of too many wool layers, cutting the river surface into blocks with long-toothed saws. The blocks are maybe 2 feet square, maybe 18 inches deep. Each one weighs around 300 pounds when it comes out of the river. Teams of horses drag them to shore. Workers load them onto wagons. The wagons haul them to ice houses which are built into hillsides or deep underground, insulated with sawdust and straw, designed to hold winter cold through the entire summer and into the following fall. The ice in the ice house on Canal Street was cut in February. It has been sitting in the cold dark since February, losing about a third of its volume to slow melting, kept cold by the mass of the ice around it and the insulation of the building. By July it is smaller than it was, but it is still cold. It is still, in a meaningful physical sense, February. When you carry a block of that ice up 4 flights of stairs in July and slide it into someone's icebox and feel the cold come off it, you are feeling February. You are feeling the Hudson River in winter, the thickness of frozen water, the specific cold of an upstate morning when the ice cutters were out there before dawn with their saws, the cold of winter, kept for summer. The fishmonger was right. The ice trade is one of the stranger things about this moment in American history, a moment that people living inside it take completely for granted. Every year, thousands of workers go out onto frozen rivers in the coldest months, cut ice, haul it, store it, and then sell it in the summer. It is a supply chain built entirely on managing the natural world, on using winter to supply summer, on the simple logic that cold from one season can be preserved and sold in another. This will not last much longer. In 20 years, mechanically manufactured ice made with compressed ammonia and evaporation technology, ice made without a river, without a winter, without a single ice cutter in the dark cold, will begin to replace the natural ice trade. By 1910, the transition will be well underway. By 1920, the ice cutters on the Hudson will be a memory, the ice houses falling into ruin, the whole elaborate system of winter to summer cold storage becoming obsolete. But right now, in 1896, it is everything. In this heat wave, it is the difference between life and death for the oldest and the youngest, and the sickest people in the tenements. The ice in the Manhattan Ice Company wagon, cut from a frozen river 5 months ago by men you will never meet, hauled and stored by workers who earn less than you do, is keeping people alive in this July heat. You are the last link in that chain. You and your ice tongs and your wool jacket and your 4 flights of stairs. This is not a small thing. You do not think of it exactly that way. You're 20 years old and tired and your arms hurt and the jacket is wet through. But in some way you feel it. The weight of the ice, the weight of the route, the 47 deliveries and the 43 families and the children in the interior rooms and the old women lying in the heat and the old men alone behind doors that need knocking on. You feel it. You carry it. You keep going. There is something else you should know about the summer of 1896, something the newspapers are covering and the politicians are discussing, and the city is beginning to understand in a painful public way. The ice in this heat wave is not free. You know this. 25 cents for a £50 block, which is significant money on a $4 a week wage. What you may not know, what most of the people buying ice this week do not know, is that the price has been rising, not because of weather, not because of supply problems, because of the American Ice Company. The American Ice Company is a trust. It was put together a few years earlier by a group of businessmen who figured out that if you control enough of the ice supply in a city, you can set the price. They have been buying up ice companies in New York and in other cities, but New York is the prize, acquiring ice houses and river cutting rights and distribution networks, working toward the moment when they control enough of the market to charge whatever they want. That moment is coming. It is not quite here yet, in 1896. The Manhattan Ice Company you work for is still independent, one of several competitors, and the market is still roughly competitive. But you have heard Hannigan talk about it, in the indirect way he talks about business matters, referencing something coming that he does not like the look of. When one company owns all the ice, he said once, driving the route, not looking at you, who do you think pays? He let the sentence sit there. You understood what he meant. When one company owns the ice, the people in the tenements pay. The people who cannot live without ice in summer pay. The people who have no alternative pay. 25 cents a block today might be 35 cents next summer, 45 the summer after that. And the heat will not change. The tenements will not suddenly grow windows. The children in the interior rooms will still need the temperature moderated or they will die, the way they are dying now, the way the morgue wagons are collecting them. You carry your ice. You do your 47 deliverers. You try not to think too hard about the forces moving above the level of the route, above the level of the tongs and the stairs and the woman who gives you lemonade on the 3rd floor of Houston Street. But you think about it sometimes, and sometimes, just sometimes, when you slide a block of ice into someone's icebox and feel the cold come off it, and watch the relief on their face, the specific relief of someone who's been hot for 7 days and is finally briefly cool, you think, this matters. This specific thing, right now, in this specific kitchen, matters. That is not nothing. Let me also tell you about the wool, since we've touched on it but not finished. There is an argument that people in 1896 have when they think to make it, that wool is actually better in heat than cotton. Not the heavy winter weight, not what you're wearing, but lighter summer wool, the kind that wealthy people commission from their tailors in spring for the hot months ahead. Summer weight wool. Lighter weave, lighter colour. Lighter colours reflect rather than absorb heat, which is a fact that your dark brown trousers are actively ignoring. Designed to use wool's natural properties without adding the thermal mass of winter fabric. This argument is correct, as far as it goes. Wool does breathe. Light-coloured, lightweight summer wool is a reasonable hot weather fabric, better than cotton in some ways, particularly in high humidity. You're not wearing light-coloured, lightweight summer wool. You're wearing the cheapest functional clothing available to a young man in your position, which is heavy brown wool cut for durability rather than comfort, dyed dark because dark hides stains, and sold by weight because that is how working clothes are sold. The gap between the ideal and the actual is the story of a lot of lives. The ideal wool suit for a hot summer day exists. It exists in the shop windows on Broadway, where the wealthy men have their clothes made. It exists in the wardrobes of the people in the hotels you deliver to. It exists as a concept that everyone in the neighbourhood knows, and nobody you know can afford. What you have is what you have, and what you have is doing its best in 94 degrees, which is to say, it is keeping you covered, and it is keeping you moving, and it is soaking itself through with your sweat, and it is heavy on your shoulders, and it is not enough, but it is what you have. This is true of more than the wool. More than the wool, more than the route, more than the 8x9 room and the wet mattress and the single window. All of it is doing its best. You are doing your best. The city is doing its best. Mr. Stern on the 3rd floor of Stanton Street did his best. And here is what nobody tells you. What nobody in 1896 has quite found the words for, and what later generations will have too many words for. Doing your best in impossible conditions is not a failure of the conditions. The conditions are real. The conditions are wrong. 25 cents for a block of ice in a neighbourhood where $4 a week is a good wage is wrong. Buildings with no ventilation and no windows and 43 families sharing a single courtyard pump is wrong. Children dying of heat in the city of New York is wrong. These things are wrong, and you carry the ice anyway, because the ice is what you have, because the route is what you know, because tonight, in apartment 4C of 237 Delancey Street, there is a £50 block of February in Mrs. Abramowitz's icebox, and because of that block, the 5 members of the Abramowitz family will have a degree of cool in their kitchen that they would not have had otherwise. Because of that block, the milk will not sour and the meat will keep, and the children will be able to sleep. That is what the £50 bought. That is what the 5 flights of stairs bought. That is what you are for in this moment, in this city, in this impossible summer, the city at midnight. Let me walk you through it one more time before sleep takes you, because there is something in the late-night city that the daytime city does not show you, something that only becomes visible when most of the noise is drained away and the usual commerce of survival has wound down, and what remains is the real infrastructure, the underneath of things. Milk wagon is on Canal Street right now. The milkman started at 11 and will finish around 4, hitting every building on his route, leaving bottles and cans in vestibules and outside doors, collecting the empty ones, noting which accounts are behind on payment. He does this every night. He did it last night. He will do it tomorrow night. In this heat his milk has to move faster than usual. Milk goes bad quickly in 90-degree nights, and he's anxious about it, watching the sky for the false dawn that will tell him to hurry. A group of men are sleeping in Seward Park, on the benches and on the grass, their coats folded under their heads. The park is supposed to close at dusk. The police are supposed to move people along. Tonight the police have not come, and the men are still sleeping, because the police have other things to do tonight, and because moving people who have nowhere else to go is a task that feels different in the 7th day of a heat wave than it does on a cool September evening. A woman is sitting by an open window in a building on Essex Street, a candle guttered to nothing on the sill beside her, watching the street. She cannot sleep. She's not slept well in a week. She's watching the street partly because the street is something to watch, and partly because her youngest daughter had a fever yesterday, and she wants to be sure someone is awake in case something changes. The daughter's fever broke at 10. The daughter is sleeping now, breathing steadily, but the woman is still watching. You do not go to sleep again easily when you have been watching child's fever in a heat wave. A man is walking home alone from his saloon on Orchard Street. He is not drunk, or not very drunk, just tired and slow, moving through the midnight streets with the unhurried gait of a man who has nowhere in particular to be by any particular time. He passes the corner where the dead horse lay this morning. The horse is gone now, finally collected. This street in front of the corner slightly darker than the surrounding cobblestones where the fluid soaked in. He does not notice this. He crosses the corner and continues home. On the East River, a night ferry is crossing from Brooklyn. There are 6 people on it heading back to Manhattan after working late or visiting, or doing whatever keeps people out until midnight. The ferry is lit by lanterns at bow and stern, and in the dark water the lights make wobbly reflections, gold and orange, reaching toward the pilings and dissolving. The ferryman steers without looking at the reflections. He has been crossing this river for 15 years, and he does not need to watch the water to know where it is. A policeman in a call box on Broadway is reporting to headquarters that everything is quiet. This is true in the sense that there is no particular crisis on his beat, no crime in progress, no emergency requiring action. It is not true in the broader sense. The heat is a crisis. The 230 dead are a crisis. The children in the interior rooms are a crisis. But none of that fits into a police call box report, and none of it is something a beat cop can fix. So he reports that everything is quiet and replaces the earpiece and continues his rounds. All of this is happening right now, while you're in your 8x9 room with your face near the window and your eyes growing heavy. All of these people, all of these nights, all of them surviving, the window, the faint air movement from the air shaft, your breath slowing. Think about the wool one more time. The wool trousers on the floor, the wool vest on the chair, the jacket on the hook by the door, still not quite dry from the day. You will put them on again tomorrow. You will button the collar. You will go meet the wagon. And here is the thing you have figured out. 8 months in, 20 years old from County Clare. The wool is not the enemy. The conditions are the enemy. The poverty that makes cheaper fabric the only option. The social conventions that require full dress in all weather. The tenements that trap heat, and the ice houses that cannot make enough, and the city that has not yet learned, has not yet been forced to learn, how to protect its poorest people in summer. The wool is just wool, heavy and hot and familiar and yours. Tomorrow you will put it on and it will be what it always is, too warm, slightly damp from yesterday, still smelling faintly of you, your particular smell that has been pressing into the fibre for months. The jacket that has been on your shoulders through every delivery of the past 4 months. The vest that has a small oil stain on the left side from a delivery to a restaurant kitchen, a stain you noticed, and then stopped noticing. The trousers that have worn thin at the left knee from the way you kneel to check the ice level in a particular kind of icebox at the bottom shelf. Your clothes, your particular arrangement of who you are and what you do and where you come from. You are Thomas Malone from County Clare, and you wear wool in July in New York, and you carry ice up 5 flights of stairs, and you knock on doors when you smell something wrong on the landing, and you take the dime and you buy something cold with it, and you go home at the end of the day and you wash the shirt and you sit on Mrs. Bukowski's steps, and you walk to the waterfront and hear the concertina and watch the river in the bronze evening light. And tomorrow you will do it again, not because someone is forcing you, not because you have no choice, because this is the life you came to find, because the city is giving you exactly what it gives everyone who arrives with nothing and works hard and pays attention, a slow education in what it takes to survive here. And survival, you are learning, is not a single dramatic act. It is not a day of heroism or a moment of decision. It is this: the wet mattress and the early morning, and the pump water and the tongs and the stairs and the lemonade on the 3rd floor, and the dime from the old woman and the face near the window in the faint moving air. It is exactly this, repeated. One day, then one more, then one more after that. Your eyes are heavy now. The window, the air, the building breathing around you, the 43 families doing their nighttime things, sleeping and not sleeping and feeding and worrying and dreaming. You are one of them. You belong here, in the way that belonging works in a city like this. Not by birthright or invitation, but by showing up and working and surviving and doing it again tomorrow, and the day after that, until the city has absorbed you the way it absorbs everyone eventually, quietly, without ceremony, the city simply continuing and you continuing inside it. You belong here. That is enough. That is in fact more than enough. Let sleep come. It is coming already, the way it always comes when you have truly worked all the way through a day. Not the anxious non-sleep of the early evening when the heat is at its worst, but real sleep. The sleep that reaches up from somewhere beneath you and takes you, that does not ask for permission, that simply claims what the body has earned. Let the sounds of Canal Street become the sounds of something farther away than Canal Street. Let the smell of the tenement, all 43 families and all their various smells, become something you are not tracking anymore, something below the level of attention. Let your hands unclench. They're still working slightly, the hands of a man who carried ice all day. The fingers curled slightly as if still around the tongs. Let them go. The tongs are on their hook in the stable. The ice is in the ice boxes. The day is done. Let the weight of the jacket, the wet-through wool jacket hanging on its hook, become something you're not wearing right now. You're not carrying anything right now. You're lying down and you're not carrying anything, and nothing is required of you for the next 5 hours. Let that be true. Let that be enough. You are warm enough, safe enough, rested enough. You have a roof over your head and work that matters, and people who are counting on you to show up tomorrow and do it all again. That is more than a lot of people have. That is enough. Let the city do its nighttime things without you. Let the milk wagon finish its route. Let the woman on Essex Street finally close her eyes, now that her daughter's fever has broken, now that she can hear the small steady breathing from the next room. Let the man walking home from the saloon find his building, find his floor, find his room. Let the night ferry tie up at the downtown pier and the passengers disperse into the midnight streets. Let it all continue without you for a while. You have done your part today. Now let go. the window, the air, the building, the city, murmuring, always murmuring, the sound getting farther away, or maybe you getting farther from the sound. It is the same thing. The distance is the same distance. And in that distance, everything softens and rounds at the edges, and the heat becomes just warmth, and the wetness of the mattress becomes just texture, and the sounds of the city become just sound. Undifferentiated, the sound of the world going on. You are going somewhere else now, somewhere quieter, somewhere where there are no tongs and no ice and no stairs and no manifest with 47 stops on it. Just this, the dark behind your eyes and the faint air from the window touching your face one more time before sleep takes it, and the building breathing, and the city breathing, and you breathing, in and out, in and out. The oldest rhythm, the one that has nothing to do with ice or wool or the economics of poverty or the temperature at midnight in July. Just the breath, just the dark, just rest. Centuries will pass. The tenement on Delancey Street will be torn down eventually, maybe in 30 years. A different building will go up, then maybe another. The cobblestones will be paved over. The pushcarts will disappear into regulations and time. The horses will go. The gas lamps will go. The pump in the courtyard will be replaced by pipes in every room, and then by faucets with hot and cold running water, and then by air conditioning that makes 94 degrees outside into something you never have to feel inside, that seals the inside world from the outside weather, in a way that would seem like magic to anyone standing on this roof in July of 1896. The ice trade will end. The natural ice cutters on the Hudson will work their last winter, somewhere around 1920, and then disappear. The whole elaborate system of storing winter cold for summer becoming obsolete in a generation, replaced by machines that make cold out of electricity and chemistry. The wool will give way to cotton, and cotton will give way to synthetics, and the synthetics will be engineered to breathe and wick and cool in ways that the sheep of Ireland never imagined. Someone will one day make a fabric that keeps you cool in summer heat and warm in winter cold and wicks moisture away from your skin while you work. A fabric that does everything wool tried to do and does it without the weight, without the heat, without the slow, miserable soaking of a July afternoon. All of this will happen. But the people will still be here. Different people, different lives, different problems, some better, some differently difficult, some that people in 1896 could not have imagined, and some that would be recognizable in their shape, even if not in their specific form. People will still wake up before they want to, and go out to do work that is harder than it should be, for pay that is lower than it should be, and come home at the end of the day with aching bodies and quiet minds and a sense, somewhere underneath the exhaustion, that this is the life, that this specific difficult thing is what it means to be alive in this city. People will still stand at the edge of the water in the evening and feel the breeze on their faces and think, even just for a moment, this is worth it. People will still lie in the dark at the end of a long day and listen to the city breathing around them and feel somewhere in the soft space between waking and sleep that they belong here, that the city is theirs, in the way that belonging to something you worked for is always more true than belonging to something you were given. Some things do not change. The need for rest at the end of a long day does not change. The relief of stillness after motion does not change. The specific quality of the moment when sleep finally comes, when the hands unclench and the breath slows and the sounds of the world recede, that does not change. That is the same now as it was in 1896, in the 8x9 room with the wet mattress and the single window and the water stain on the ceiling that looks like Ireland. That is the same for you, right now, wherever you are. Let it be the same. Let the sounds around you become the sounds of the city that is always running underneath everything, the baseline noise of the world going on, not requiring your attention, not requiring your intervention, just going on the way it always goes on. Let your hands be still. Let your breathing slow. Let the air touch your face one more time, the faintest movement of air, and then let even that go. Let even the noticing of the air go. Let everything go that is not the simple fact of rest. You have carried enough today. You have knocked on the right doors. You have drunk enough water. You have felt the cold of February in a July kitchen. And you have stood at the waterfront and heard the concertina and sat on the roof and looked at the Brooklyn Bridge in the gaslight. You have been here. You've been fully here. Now go somewhere else for a while. Let sleep take you the way the ice takes the heat, slowly, completely, without negotiation. Let the city run without you for the next 5 hours. Let the morning come when it comes. You will be ready. You are always ready. You are Thomas Malone from County Clare, 20 years old, and you carry ice in July and you survive. That is enough. That is actually everything. Good night. Actually, wait. Before we get to sleep, let me tell you one more thing about the morning, the first morning. Because there is a detail I left out and it matters. When you crossed the courtyard in the grey dawn, before you put the jacket on, before you went to meet the wagon, you passed a boy in the hallway who was leaning against the wall outside the bathroom that serves the hall floor. The bathroom, there is one per floor in this building, which is considered adequate, has been in use since before 4 o'clock because in the heat nobody is sleeping past 3 and the line for the bathroom forms early. The boy in the hall is maybe 8 years old, the second son of the Kowalski family from 4A, and he is waiting for his turn, and he is half asleep standing up, drooping against the wall with the specific posture of a child who has not had enough rest. He looks at you when you pass. Too hot, he says. Yes, you say. My brother says it will be hot all week. It will. My brother says if you put your head in the icebox it helps. You think about this. Does your family have an icebox? He shakes his head. No. Put a wet cloth on your neck, you say, when you get up. Keeps the blood cool. He nods solemnly, filing this away. You go down the stairs. He stays at his post in the hall, waiting for the bathroom, still half asleep. You thought of him, off and on through the morning. The wet cloth on the neck, it is not much. It is not February ice in a wooden box. It is a damp cloth, and whatever cold the water pump can offer at 5 in the morning. But it is something. It is the small toolkit that people build in extreme circumstances, the collection of techniques that get shared from neighbour to neighbour, that do not appear in any official guidance, that exist only because someone tried them and they worked and they told someone else. Put your wrists under the pump water. Stop at Sullivan's. Drink more than you think you need to. Sleep as close to the window as you can get. When you carry ice, let yourself be near the cold for a moment. Take the dime. Buy something cold. These are the survival instructions for a heatwave in 1896. Nobody wrote them down. Nobody distributed them. They just moved through the neighbourhood the way all essential information moves through a neighbourhood. Person to person, stoop to stoop, in the morning by the pump, and in the evening on the steps and in the halls between one apartment and another. This is how people survived before there were emergency services and cooling centres and public health announcements. By watching each other, by telling each other things, by the small economies of information that cost nothing to pass along and might mean everything to the person who receives them. The wet cloth on the neck, worth knowing. And there is one more person from the morning that I did not mention. One more person you passed in the first grey light of the day before the route began, before the wagon and the tongs and the 47 stops. You passed her on Delancey Street, 2 blocks from the stable. She was selling newspapers. Not unusual. There are newspaper sellers on most corners, mostly children and young men who buy the papers in bulk from the distribution houses and sell them one at a time for a penny. This woman was older, maybe 50, with a stack of papers on a folding table and a handwritten sign that said "Today's papers in English," and something underneath in another language, Yiddish probably. She has been on this corner for years. You know her slightly the way you know the fixtures of the neighbourhood, by sight, by regularity, by the fact that she is always there when she's supposed to be. She held up a paper as you passed. You had a penny. You took the paper. You did not read it then. You were walking fast toward the stable, thinking about the route, thinking about the heat, not stopping. You folded it into your jacket pocket and went on. You read it during the Sullivan stop, those 15 minutes of shade and water, sitting on the bench while Hannigan let Nell drink and you let your arms rest. The headline was not about the heat. The heat was not headline news on day 7 because by day 7 the heat was just reality. The way war is not headline news after 100 days. It is the context that everything else happens inside. The heat was on the front page in the corner, a small daily update. 230 dead. Relief expected Saturday. Relief expected Saturday. You read that part twice. The main headline was about William Jennings Bryan, who gave a speech 2 days earlier at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago that everyone is calling the Cross of Gold speech, an extraordinary piece of rhetoric about silver coinage and the oppression of ordinary Americans by wealthy financial interests. A speech that made him the Democratic nominee for president, and that people are already calling one of the great political speeches in American history. The paper gives 2 full columns to it. You read the summary, and you read some of the quoted phrases, and you think, he is talking about people like the people in this neighborhood, about people who work with their hands and carry things and live in buildings without ventilation and cannot afford light summer wool. You do not know much about silver coinage. You're not sure you understand the monetary argument, but you understand that someone with a voice and a platform is saying that the country has been built on the backs of ordinary people and that ordinary people deserve better than what they are getting. You fold the paper back into your pocket. Hannigan climbs back up to the bench. "Ready?" he says. "Yes, sir." The wagon moves. You think about Brian's speech for maybe 10 minutes. Then the route takes over and you do not think about it again until evening, sitting on the rooftop, looking at the Brooklyn Bridge, when it comes back to you in fragments. Something about crowns of thorns. Something about crucifixion. Big words for something as practical and daily as the price of silver, but maybe that is the point. Maybe the impracticality of the language is exactly right for something that actually matters to everyone, and that most people have no language for at all. The cold of winter kept for summer. The gold of rhetoric applied to the silver of everyday survival. You do not know enough about either of these things to draw a proper conclusion. You're 20 years old and from County Clare and you carry ice for a living, but you think, maybe that is exactly who should be listening. Actually, Let me take you back one more time to the middle of the day. To noon, when the heat was at its absolute worst and the city was at its quietest, and you were on your 30-second delivery, which was the 5th floor of a building on Attorney Street, which is one of the denser blocks in the neighbourhood, which means the interior of the building is darker and hotter and closer than even the usual tenement standard. 5th floor, apartment 5-D, standing order, £50 block. You knock. The door opens immediately as if she was waiting on the other side. She's a woman of about 35, red-haired, freckled, clearly Irish. From the West Coast by the cut of her, from the look of her face, the particular combination of features you recognise from home, the Clare look, the Galway look, the face that the Atlantic weather has been shaping for 10,000 years. She looks at you and you look at her and neither of you says anything for a moment. Claire, you say. Mayo, she says. You carry the ice in. Her apartment has 3 children in it. They're arranged on the floor of the main room in what looks like a deliberate strategy. One near the window, one in the middle of the floor, one near the inner wall. As if she has calculated where the air is slightly better and placed a child in each position. The oldest is maybe 8. The youngest is 3. They are all 3 lying on the floor with wet cloths on their foreheads and the stunned look of children who have been too hot for too long. Is the baby sick, you ask? She shakes her head. Just hot. They're all just hot. You put the ice in the box, you look at the children on the floor. The middle one, you say, and then stop because what you were going to say is the middle one looks like my sister at that age, which is true but not helpful. She looks at you steadily. You're a long way from Claire, she says. 8 months, you say. 7 years for me, she says. It gets... She stops. It becomes... She stops again. You stop being new eventually. You look at the children. The oldest has fallen asleep on the floor despite the heat, the wet cloth shifting on his forehead as he moves. Does it get easier, you ask? She looks at the sleeping child. Different, she says. It gets different. You go back down the stairs, 5 flights into the noon heat. You stand on the street for a moment in the full weight of the July sun, the sweat already appearing on your forehead before you have taken 3 steps, the jacket soaking up the heat the way it always soaks up the heat. Different, she said. You think about that. 7 years of different. 7 years of Mayo becoming New York, of the Atlantic becoming the East River, of rain becoming this terrible sun. 7 years of putting the ice in the box and saying Claire, and having someone else say a different county name, and standing in the small silence of 2 people who know the same fields and the same stone walls and the same kind of faces, and are somehow here, in the middle of this enormous American summer. You put 1 foot in front of the other and you go back to the wagon and you pick up the next block and you carry it up the next set of stairs. Different, she said. You will hold on to that. Let me take you back to the stable. One more time to the moment just before you left. You stood in the empty stable after Hannigan went home, listening to the horses in their stalls, and you were doing the thing that you have been learning to do in these 8 months, which is to take a moment at the end of the day and actually feel the end of the day. Not think about it, just feel it. The day has weight, not metaphorical weight, actual weight. The weight of the ice tongs, 4 pounds, hanging on your hands for 8 hours. The weight of the 50-pound blocks, 47 of them, carried varying distances over varying numbers of stairs. If you did the mathematics, and you're not going to do the mathematics right now, you're too tired to do mathematics, the cumulative weight you move today is somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 pounds, not in one go, in 50-pound increments, but cumulative. Your arms know this, your back knows this. Your legs, which have climbed approximately 1,100 stairs today. You have counted stairs on good days, slow days, days when you had nothing else to think about, and 1,100 is a rough estimate for a full route. Your legs know this intimately, and there is something in knowing it, in feeling the day physically in your body, the ache that is not damage but work, the specific muscle tiredness that comes from having done what you were built to do and done it fully. You are a young man with a young man's body, and that body was built for carrying things, and the day has asked it to carry things, and it has, and there is a kind of satisfaction in that, quiet and physical, the satisfaction that does not require words. You're standing in the stable, Nell is at her water. Murphy, the bay horse, is at his feed bucket, eating steadily, his tail switching at flies with the unconcerned rhythm of an animal that has accepted that flies are the condition of existence and are not going to stop existing just because you switch your tail at them. The stable smells of horses and hay, and the specific sweet rot of manure, and the iron tang of water from the pump. It is not an unpleasant smell. You've come to find it comfortable, the way the smell of the bakery in the morning is comfortable even when you're not hungry, the way familiar smells become associated with safe moments. This is a safe moment. Nothing is required of you. The route is done. The tongs are on the hook. Hannigan is gone. Even the stable boys have finished and gone home. It is just you and the horses and the specific late afternoon quiet of a place whose business is over for the day. You think of Hannigan saying, "You knocked." You think of the pharmacist saying, "Sometimes just knocking is the whole of it." You think of Mrs. Abramowitz giving you half a slice of bread. You think of the woman from Mayo saying different. You think of the old woman from Munich saying, "In this heat, take it." These are the things you are carrying out of the day, not the 47 deliveries, not the 230 dead, not the specific moral weight of the heat wave, or the failing systems, or the trusts buying up the ice companies, or the politicians whose summer houses have plenty of ventilation, and who are not losing children to heat exhaustion in their interior rooms. Those things are real. You know they are real. You will know them more as you get older and have more language for what you are seeing. But right now, in the stable, in the end of the day, what you're carrying out is the bread and the lemonade and the dime and the two Irish women meeting in the heat of a New York July and recognizing each other by county. These are the things that cost nothing and are worth everything. The small economies of survival, the gifts that pass between people who have nothing to spare and give anyway. You carry these out of the stable and into the evening. You will carry them for a long time. And there is one more moment I want to give you before the night takes everything. It happened around 3 in the afternoon, at the end of the second load, when you were on your 42nd delivery to a building on Hester Street that you have been to before and will be to again, and on the way down from the 4th floor you passed a group of children on the 2nd floor landing. 4 of them, maybe 8 to 12 in age, spread across the landing doing nothing, not playing, not fighting, not doing anything that required effort, just existing in the shade of the 2nd floor landing, which is slightly cooler than the street because it is inside and out of the direct sun, and the building's thick walls are holding the cool of the night before. You passed them. One of them, the oldest, a girl of maybe 11, called after you. Did you see it this morning? See what? The ice cart on Orchard Street. They broke a big one, all over the street. You did not see this. You know what she's talking about, though. One of the other ice company wagons, a competitor, hit a pothole on Orchard at 6 this morning, and a 50-pound block slid off the back and shattered on the cobblestones. You heard about it from another driver in the stable line. The block of ice, February cold, exploded across the hot street of July, New York at 6 in the morning. I heard about it, you say. We went and got the pieces, the girl says. There is something in her voice, not quite pride. More like the satisfaction of having solved a problem efficiently. Before they melted. How long did they last? She thinks about this. Not long, but long enough. Not long, but long enough. You stand on the second-floor landing of a building on Hester Street, looking at 4 children who spent this morning collecting shattered pieces of ice off a July street in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, who held pieces of February in their hot hands for as long as February lasted, who called it enough. Smart, you say. She shrugs as if to say, of course. What else would you do? You go down the last flight and out into the street. Not long, but long enough. You think about this for the rest of the afternoon. The ice that breaks and scatters. The cold that does not last. The relief that is measured not in hours but in minutes. Not in permanence but in sufficiency. Not in solving the problem but in making the problem briefly bearable. Not long but long enough. This is the heat wave distilled. This is, in some ways, much more than the heat wave. This is the whole of what you are learning in this city, in this summer, in this life. That enough is not nothing. That brief is not meaningless. That the piece of ice on the Hester Street cobblestones, the piece that melts in a child's hands in 10 minutes, that ice did its work in 10 minutes. It was cold. The hands that held it were cold. For those 10 minutes, the heat did not win. That matters. That matters, even though it is gone. Everything good in this life is like that somewhat. The lemonade on the 3rd floor of Houston Street, gone in 3 swallows. The cold of the icebox door, gone in 5 seconds. The breeze off the river touched your face and moved on. The concertina music on the pier, fading into the evening. None of these things last. All of them happened. Not long, but long enough. You go back to the wagon, you pick up the next block and you carry it up the next set of stairs, and the afternoon continues and the heat continues and the day continues being exactly what it is, and it is enough. Now let me let you sleep. You have carried everything there is to carry today. The ice and the knowledge and the weight of the city and the faces of the people who gave you things they did not have to give. The bread and the lemonade and the dime and the cold water and the Mayo woman's voice saying different. Let it all settle. Let the 8x9 room settle around you. Let the wet mattress be what it is. Your bed. Your particular arrangement of rest, the thing that knows the shape of you by now after 8 months. Let the window do what it can, a little, a faint movement, enough. Let the city continue without you. You warm enough, safe enough, rested enough. You have the route tomorrow and the route the day after, and the summer has maybe 3 more weeks in it, maybe 4. Before the first breath of September changes the air and people begin to remember that there is a world beyond heat, that this will not last, that the ice in the Hudson will freeze again in February and the cutters will go out again in their wool coats and cut the river into blocks, and the cold of next winter will be stored away to be sold in next summer, and this whole cycle will continue. Summer following winter following summer, the city breathing in and breathing out, generation following generation, each one carrying what the one before it carried, and laying it down at the end of each day in the 8x9 rooms, and the larger rooms and the smaller rooms, and the rooms they have not yet thought of building. All of it, always, going on. You're going on too. One more day, and then one more. Let sleep come. It is here already. Underneath everything, it has been waiting. The sounds of the city are the sounds of a river now, not a city. Just the sound of things moving and settling. The sound of the world being the world without requiring anything from you specifically. The world making its own arrangements for the night. You are Thomas Malone. You are 20 years old. You are from County Clare. You are here. You are enough. Good night.